agenda for this many people to show up. So we're calling the meeting to order, and the first order of business is to announce we just had an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss litigation. The second order of business will be to approve the minutes of the July 5th and August 1st meeting.
I move that the minutes for July 5th and August 1st, 2016 are approved as stated.
Is there a second?
I will second as to August 1st. I was not here July 5th, so I can't second.
I'll second August 1st.
July.
July 5th.
I'm sorry, July 5th. I'm already making mistakes. Any questions from the audience? That's good, that's a start. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next is the bills list. The township bills list for this month is this period is $39,123.74. The reimbursable bills list is $2,979.98. The subdivision utility plant bills list is $24,264.28. So the total bills list to be approved tonight is $66,368.
I move that the bills list dated 8/15/2016 in the amount of $56,368 is approved as stated.
Second.
Any questions from the audience? Art?
You have card member service, and under that you have cordless tools for the road department. What were they?
No. Do you know the?
Yeah, you know.
Yes. Do you know what it is? Then tell.
There's a set of 18-volt hand tools, Milwaukee. There's 6 of them. I guess the road department.
Okay.
Prior to that, they were bringing in hand tools from home to use them sporadically, so they decided to get a set.
Okay. And the other one under Farm Right Incorporated replaced a drive shaft. What was the drive shaft?
Where are you looking, Art?
Subdivision utility plant filter.
I don't have an answer for that. Do you, Erica?
Yes. There was a broken pressure switch for one of the units, and it was fixed and replaced.
All right, I wondered, it's a drive shaft.
Anything else, Art?
Thank you. No.
Brian?
Under Apex Computer Company Corporation, there's a expired certificate maintenance. What certificate expired?
We'll have to check into the system that needed an upgrade.
Okay. We just asked, we had 6 cordless tools. What type of tools were they?
Reciprocal saw, impact driver, drill.
It was like a 6-piece set.
Okay. Under McGee Electric, says Township lunchroom light motion sensors. Does this mean that the lights will automatically go out when somebody is not there and go on when they come in?
That's correct.
Good. And the last one down here is O&J Roberts School District Tax, Land Trust, north side of South Chester Springs Road, 12.8 open space. Why are we paying that?
Yeah, I can answer that. That was land that was acquired by the township for the sake of the land trust, which belongs to the township and it's not used for public purpose, so we pay it as a land.
You're saying that it is owned by the township?
It's my understanding, yes.
Then that's very interesting because the Chester County land records show it as being owned by the West Vincent Land Trust,
Really?
not by the township.
The intention was to convey it to the township. I don't know, I wasn't part of it at that point.
All I'm saying is that the land record says it's owned by the land trust, and if we're paying for all the land trust, then there's several other pieces of property we should be paying for.
I think you brought up a good question, we're gonna have to look into it.
Yes.
Would you like a phone call or next meeting do?
How about like next meeting, give us an explanation of what's going on, complete with explaining why the Redford Stone Show is being, owned by the township.
Okay.
Should we hold that?
We've done that.
We've done it for years.
Okay, and if we find out that it
It's
is
open
owned by,
space. St. Stephen's Green open space.
well, I understand, but if it's not owned by the township, then it should be reimbursed by whoever does own it, which is the West Vincent Land Trust. Right? Is that correct?
There was a problem with the purchase, and so the land trust bought it for the township, because there's.
But, yeah, I know, but if the owner is not the township, then we should not be paying it.
Sir, do you have?
The intention was that the land trust was going to buy it and turn it over to the township, so I don't know what happened in that, but we've been treating it as the land trust owning it, because that's the property where people wanted the pine trees at the wall.
Yeah, that's fine. We
trims
just
and
need to
stuff.
clean it up.
So,
And we'll have the land, I mean, for now, the land trust should be paying it, and then
well,
they should transfer.
I'm not addressing that question, I'm addressing that right now, the Board of Supervisors recognizes it as a land trust owned property, because you called them to clean up the tree problem, so.
Oh, oh.
The simplest answer is if we pull this one off the invoice, unless there's what's the word I'm looking for? A rebate.
Penalty. Yeah,
So can we pull that off till the next meeting?
Sure.
Well, then there would be a penalty, correct? This is due August
Do you
31st?
remember what happened?
This is school tax, correct?
The school tax,
Right.
yeah.
So, I mean, why can't we just pay it and get reimbursed?
But it
We're
never
gonna leave it
got-
on. We're gonna check it out, is that okay, Brian?
Fine, thank you.
And Joe corroborates, he's the treasurer of the land trust, and he said it was the intent for it to be turned over, but
Okay. Any other questions on the bills? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Next is the police report. Chief Swindler couldn't make it tonight, so he sent Sergeant Russell.
During the month of July, the West Vincent Township Police Department responded to 176 calls for service, including the following: investigation of an ATV theft from a residence in the 2100 block of Conestoga Road. Also, investigation of a theft of construction materials in the 2000 block of Eagle Farms Road. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions? We're breezing right along tonight. Next, we received two correspondence. One, a thank you note from Cindy, I might be mentioning or saying the thing correctly, Garustis, thanking Officer Rubina for his assistance. And then Chief Swinger got one from the Ross family for their assistance to their family. It's always nice to get those things. Next is a request from the French and Pickering Creeks Conservation Trust for a letter of support to its partnering with the Guardians of the Brandywine and GBA to apply to the DEP for an upgrade of Marsh Creek from high quality to EV, stands for
exceptional value.
exceptional value. Thank you. So, do I have a motion to that effect, or do you want to discuss it first? What would you like to do, gentlemen?
I would move that the board send a letter of support to French and Pickering Conservation Trust for application to change of the Marsh Creek stream designation from high quality to extreme value, exceptional value.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a letter that Pam submitted, and I think it says everything that we need to say, so when you said, did you have a chance to read it? It's on the back of that sheet.
I did.
Okay. So I'm in agreement to any comments from the audience? Brian?
What's the impact of changing it from HQ to EV?
Well, I'm gonna let some experts, there's two of them in the room, more than two of them. But yes, Victoria?
It offers the stream more protection from a variety of factors: stormwater runoff, construction. Essentially, puts it in a higher class according to the DEP. So when the permit goes into the DEP, they review it more stringently than a HQ stream.
Does it have any impact on the landowners of where the stream's passing through, or their use of the property, anything like that?
No.
Okay.
And most of the protections that it requires are already in the township as far as stormwater, BMPs, and stuff like that. It's more just a designation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Does it have any impact on the recreation there?
No. It actually is beneficial that it keeps it clean, so recreation and everything will be there.
Last call, any questions? Thank you. All those in favor of the letter? Aye. Next, we have a request for a new TDR worksheet calculation for property 1049 on Bartlett Lane.
I move that the board approve the township engineer to do a TDR worksheet calculation on 1049 Barlow Lane.
Second.
David, do you want to explain what this is? I assume you got the committee got an application?
This is a property that was considered for TDR purchase, I think, in 2003. And there was a worksheet that was done. What happens is the Open Space Advisory Board goes through various things about the property and scores it. The scoring process is set forth in the application, or in the worksheet. And this was done in 2003 for this property, but since then circumstances have changed, the ordinances have changed, so we need a new calculation for that. That's what this is all.
Question, Sarah?
Yeah, so the request is from the Open Space Advisory Board, it's not from the landowner.
Yes.
Okay, that was my curiosity, thank you.
Did everybody hear that?
Does that mean that we are going to do this for everything that was over 5 years old or since the change?
Since the change, I would think, yeah. That's something that we're going to recommend to the board.
And even if we're not considering it, I mean, why would we spend the money on the engineer to do this worksheet if it's not something that we're considering at this time? And or should we take all the properties that are under the old worksheet and redo them all at once?
Well, I would say that the advisory board will come up with a recommendation to the board as to what we should be doing, and we don't particularly want to foreclose anything at this point. This is something that the engineer would basically do on a one-shot basis, I believe, and then we would evaluate it. The committee would evaluate it without charge to the township.
But what prompted the new worksheet, I guess?
I suppose that, I don't know that. I suppose the fact that circumstances have changed and the law has changed, the ordinance has changed, which is going to affect how the TDR calculation will be done.
But that's correct, but that would be for every property that was done under the old worksheet.
I think it's a new evaluation sheet, which will be used going forward, and whether the committee goes back and reevaluates everything is not something the township has to worry about, because it's not going to cost the township anything. It's the initial cost of the evaluation.
We're going to use this as a template then for reviewing others.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Any questions from the audience? Did we get a motion on this?
Yes.
Yes.
Brian?
As a result of this evaluation, would the number of TDRs be increased or decreased? Is the valuation of the TDRs going to increase or decrease? You know, David, I could just barely hear, said that they made some changes to the TDR worksheets, and thus we're redoing it in this case. What type of changes were they to the worksheets that are likely to have the impact?
They have not been made. The idea of this is to get an evaluation of how the worksheet should be changed. We're not presenting any changes at this point.
So we just picked this particular property out at random?
No. The owners of the property have applied to have to be considered, to be reconsidered. It's a situation where the parents own the property, they've died, notice that the two children are applying to, or wish to apply to sell TV rights.
Okay, is it possible that the number of TDRs on the property could increase coming out of this
I
process?
don't think it could increase, it probably more likely decrease, because the zoning ordinance is stricter now than it was.
Okay, could it potentially affect the value of those TDRs then?
Well, in the aggregate, certainly it could, if they're reduced. On the other hand, the value of TDRs is a matter of market dynamics, and there's a way to set it. It's nothing the committee's going to do anything except adopt.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next item, number 7, is quotes on the replacement of the township office air conditioner. We had another larger unit go down this week. Erica, do you want to explain this?
Sure. This week, the main AC, really HVAC, but AC mattered a lot the past few days for many. In the main office, went down, and as a result, we had an assessment of that AC unit in a repair versus replacement. It's a unit that's 12 years old and has a 15-year useful life. In looking at the repair, we have quote for $8,000 for that. For the replacement, we're looking at $17,500. Another quote came in for $16,500. We're waiting on one more quote on the replacement. One little tricky aspect of this is that the unit itself was built when this building was renovated in such a way that we have to do some light carpentry in order to access the unit and put the same size unit in a replacement. So there's some work we would need to do that may be a few $100s to maybe $1,000 or more. I don't want to pretend I have that quote just yet, because this happened just about a week ago. So we're still looking at that now, but we are pressed with dealing with the situation. We have very poor circulation in the center office area where we have our main staff, no windows, so we're dealing with that right now.
Did that make sense, Brian? Oh, you didn't raise your hand, I'm sorry. I just yeah, they apparently dropped it in by helicopter, and I'm making light of that, and built the building around this air conditioning unit, so they're going to have to cut it down and spread the thing. So what we've elected to do is, if the next bid, and you do expect one tomorrow, correct? To come in under the bidding threshold of $19,000, we're going to go with the lowest one we have now, which is Service Mark, correct?
Yes.
So we're trying to get that out in the open, and we'll do a phone
We'll have a
vote.
comparative quote list.
And then just have the carpentry work done ahead of time. So, anyway, is that okay?
I would prefer you pass a motion to go with the lowest bidder.
Okay.
You don't have to use the lowest bidder, but is your intent to use the lowest bidder?
Okay, then one of you gentlemen want to make a motion to, we don't know.
I move that we proceed with the lowest bidder after we get the last quote.
Are all the bidders bidding on using the same piece of equipment? Same.
These two are, yes. Carrier units.
We don't know what the third one
We
is.
don't know what the third unit is. That's why it's going to take us a phone conversation with the manager to discuss it. So,
I would do the motion, the lowest bidder using the same equipment.
Or meeting the
so why don't you,
comparable specifications.
your motion was never seconded, why don't you?
Okay, I move that we approve the purchase and replacement of a similar system to the Carrier based on the lowest bid.
Second.
Any other questions? Brian?
If they're all for Carrier, I don't have any really questions at all. But if we have a different brand that comes in there, it may be that the other brand is, has a better service history, et cetera. than the carrier does, in which case having a slightly increased cost might be, a better thing to do. And how do we crank that in? Because I think this thought occurred to me the last time we replaced the unit, and I'm raising it this time is, how do we crank in or take some consideration of the service history of the different manufacturers?
The last time, which was a month ago that this happened, we actually had bids for, I think, 3 different types of equipment, at least 2 that I recall.
At least 2.
Train carrier.
Train carrier, no, there was a Lennox too, I think.
Yeah, the rest.
Yeah, there was big.
So we just went through that, but that's something, until we get that 3rd bid, Brian, we can't know that. We can discuss this, and that's what I'm hoping to get to, is that we've made the public aware of what we're gonna do. Once she gets the last bid, she can then call 3 supervisors and discuss those key points with us, and we can pull the trigger.
Then I'd have to take out my lowest bid part of my motion.
I don't want the vote of the 3 supervisors outside of a public meeting on buying this unit.
Okay.
So if you can pass a motion giving you the parameters, to have the manager use some discretion, I prefer that.
Well, we're struggling verbally. Can you make that motion for us, John?
Let me give it a whirl.
Well,
Motion to authorize the manager to purchase one of the 3 units that are contained in the 2 existing proposals and one to be received in the near future. And then you've also authorized the purchase at a public meeting, and the manager has some discretion on which one of the 3 is best.
so moved.
What if you get the 3rd bidder to bid on the carrier? Then we're possibly
And what if that 3rd bidder's the $19.99 or the $20,000? You said low bid.
But you're not required to do low bidder, you're required to get 3 quotes.
So you have to have good reason not to go with low bid.
Right. But this will give you some leverage for your, otherwise you wait till next month, and it's pretty hot.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to avoid, obviously. So, did you get Joe's motion?
I did.
And I'll ask for a second on Joe's motion.
Second.
Okay, any
Who
questions
made
from the
Joe's
audience?
motion?
What's
I
that?
didn't have.
Mike.
Mike, thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
Brian?
John, the only consideration is, and I'm not going to raise an issue on this particular one, but in the future, when we're coming up to these large purchases of several $1,000s, that I think service history should be one of the factors that is evaluated, looked at, considered, that, either they're their equivalent or, and this one really is the lowest, but it really doesn't have a good service history, we maybe should go with the higher one. And that's just going forward.
Well, we pretty much did that last time, Brian.
It's readily available on the internet. I mean, I did it for my home unit a month ago too, so. And I won't carry it. Anyway, but it was only at 5:10. Any other questions? Then I'll call for a vote on Joe's motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next under correspondence, we have an email from Beverly Bartka, I hope I said that right, from Adelphia Lane, requesting an update on the Dewey property. Joe, do you want to handle that?
The status of the Dewey property is a moving target at best, but the meeting that was held between the residents and Dewey, and it was held at the request of the township, because it's important for Dewey to realize the sentiment of the public, the impact on the public. It's important for Dewey to realize the emotional state of the public on this particular issue. And based on the feedback that he got from that meeting, he has decided to withdraw his request for a commercial recreational use at that facility. He, however, is permitted to do a private recreational use. And that's already in the code, not a new code, because we changed that with the new code, but when he applied for the building permit, it was the code. And that's permitted as a private recreational use. There's nothing we can do about that. But his attorney told me that it'll be a private recreational use for strictly family and friends. The phrase "and friends" is giving me some concern, and I'm gonna meet with their attorney and figure out exactly what that means. If he has less friends than me, then it will be real simple. But he may, in fact, have more friends than me, which may turn it into something that we don't anticipate. So I need to get a handle on what "and friends" means. He also needs to supply us certain information in order for us to be issuing the building permits. There's certain things he needs to prove, and we'll have to go through that process. But from a zoning perspective, the use is permitted. And the meeting that was held apparently was very, very productive, because a couple days after the meeting, I got the call from the attorney saying they've heard what the public has to say, they respect what the public had to say, and they're going to withdraw the request to conduct commercial recreational facility.
And by that, they understand that.
Please, you gotta raise your hand. Sarah?
And by that, it means that they agree with you that the charitable use is commercial use.
They're reserving all their arguments, but if they do what they say they're going to do, I will have a document that would surrender their argument. So they will agree. They haven't yet, but they will be
Okay.
agreeing to my interpretation.
Okay, because actually it was a great meeting, but I still, as soon as I walked out, I had 4 more questions, so if you need questions, let me know.
Yeah, I think if we can handle what this "and friends" mean, I'm very optimistic about the way they reacted to the meeting and that they heard the people. They heard what the people had to say, they saw how emotional they were, and I was very encouraged by the phone call. I'm optimistic we're going to work this out and have them comply with the code. We're not giving them anything that they don't have a right to. We're only letting them do what's in the code. That's it. We're not negotiating a compromise. I'm bringing them down to the code. All I'm doing is negotiating a guarantee that they continue to comply with the code. That's all we're negotiating. So if we're going over and above what's in the code.
Yes.
Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Beverly Buckton. I've lived for 22 years on Adelphia Lane as a West Vincent Township resident. One, I wanted to thank you all for the opportunity to speak, and 2, for your support to date. When we did have the recent meeting that Mr. Dewey did hold, there were several unanswered questions, and certainly to what you spoke to in terms of what's the definition of friends, what's the overall plan. So several neighbors did get together and they would like to express their sentiment and their feelings to the board, just to be on record. And we'd like to do that in 3 ways. The first way is we have a signed and notarized petition that we'd like to present to you as being on record at this meeting. Secondly, I know you've received numerous emails. This is a copy of the more recent ones. I'm sure more to come in terms of a lot of the opposition for both special use or any kind of change of zoning. So it's very, very pleasing to hear that we're sticking to the zoning.
Well, there is no zoning change that was ever proposed. We never entertained any discussion on the zoning change
On
at
the
all.
changes, at least for special use. And 3, I know by show of hands, just in terms of the number of neighbors that are here today, if we can just show of hands. So certainly, a great showing, and this is during Chester County vacation time, I might add too. So one of the things we would like to do is just at least acknowledging we don't have much time on the agenda, but at least having the opportunity for a few neighbors to make public comment.
Okay, let's start with this. We have your emails, so they're already in our record. We'll take your petition and we'll attach it to the minutes tonight. So it's a permanent record of people that signed that petition. So you need to give us to that and we'll attach it to the minutes. Third, I would encourage, and I don't want to sound rude, but I would encourage people to really limit their comments, because I think we have them where we want them. I think we've already accomplished what you want to accomplish, or will finalize that. And we have a tremendous amount of things on the agenda that we need to discuss tonight.
But we would never want to silence concerned citizens. We hear you, truly do. And we read a lot today.
Thank you.
Yes?
I have a question. How was he, if this was the standing of the zoning and he was well aware of it, how was he able to organize that commercial event several months back that had to be called off last minute?
Well, he did that illegally, and he called it off when we called him.
So I think that flies in the face of what you're saying, that he would move towards crossing the line without permission.
Well, they were making the interpretation that since he made no money off of these events, and the money just went to whatever charity was organizing the event, that it wasn't a commercial use. My counter argument was, I don't care where the money goes, it's still a commercial use.
Exactly.
So I think they're agreeing with us now. So, and if they limit the family and friends, I'm going to have that very well defined, documented in an agreement, and able to better enforce it than we did back in the summer.
Okay, but it needs to be noted that he moved forward in the face of all these regulations anyway.
Well, he was interpreting in such a way that he thought he was compliant. We disagreed. We let him know we disagreed, and he called off the event.
Okay.
And he's agreed not to do any of those events till we work this out. But the only thing to work out is only keeping him to his promise is all we need to work out at this point.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Bradley, I'm a Township resident. I have a petition here signed by 70 people and notarized. I'd like to present it to the board.
Great, come on up. I get all the good stuff here, Chair. Thank you. Let the record show that I have a lot of signatures here. Somebody's been busy, thank you.
And again, by incorporating that into the minutes and attaching them, it'll be noted in history who signed that petition and what your position was.
Any other comments? Yes.
How does this affect other people's property, using their property for charitable events?
Well, the laws, we changed the ordinance. So now the private recreational use that he falls under is now defined differently, where he couldn't, even under his interpretation, do what he did under the current ordinance. So we've already taken the step to change our laws to prevent it.
So let's say I wanted to have a charitable event on my property. Is that going to be prohibited now?
It depends on the nature of what you're doing, your particular zoning district. But I doubt if you were bringing in 500 people for a charitable event, that charity was making money from by renting your property, that would be considered a private recreational use.
Well, not if you were renting your property. What if you were donating to the charity to use your property?
Still the
Doesn't
same,
matter.
yeah.
So pretty much we're saying that charitable events are not going to be able to be happening in the township
No.
on private property.
We're absolutely not saying that. It's not going to fall.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Can you
It's
just,
not going to fall under the term private recreational use in a residentially zoned property. You're not going to be allowed to bring in mass crowds, uncontrolled, on a residential piece. That's what our ordinance was designed to prevent, and that's what it will prevent.
so how many people is okay? Is there a number?
Family and friends.
Family and friends.
What if he has 500 families?
What's a finite
15
number for
Saturdays a
friends,
year.
please?
Well, I started this.
Finite number for
I
friends.
started this period of this meeting off by saying, that's what I need to know. Do you have more or less friends than I do?
Okay.
So we
Township
need to get a
goes
handle on that, and I told him I can't measure friends, I can measure people, I can count people, I don't know who's a
Understand
friend.
what I'm trying to say?
So that's one thing that we have to have further discussion.
I'm just saying, I'm a little concerned about charitable events getting squashed in the township.
I don't think that'll happen.
But
There's
the
plenty of places that have charitable events.
But the definition that we're standing by, does that prevent somebody from having a political gathering for a senator or a congressman or anything like that? And where they're donating money to support a political event, or any other event for that matter, at your home, the party.
Yeah, that gets into a whole new issue of freedom of speech. That's a different body of law.
I mean, like for instance, I think we may have broken a law on our farm. We let Friends of Chester Springs Library have our farm on their tour, on their historic Christmas. I'll admit it. And is that something that will no longer be allowed? Like 50 people came and toured our farm as part of a bigger tour.
As part of the, we're investigating whether to rewrite our whole zoning ordinance. And if the board elects to do that, I'll draft a special events clause for that, limiting where, when,
Okay,
and
just
how
want on record
events
that
like
you have a
will
citizen
occur.
that's concerned that we don't squash charitable events
No,
in
nobody
this
wa-
process.
Nobody wants to squash charitable events, but we want to make sure that when these events occur, they don't hinder the use and enjoyment of other people's property.
I understand, thank you.
There were a couple of hands in the back. Yes, sir.
Does that mean two things? Hi, Gary Duffield. Will there be a limit on the number of charitable events in your discussion at a given location in the township in a given time frame?
If and when we redo the zoning ordinance, there will be provisions to that effect.
And you're going to have a number of people under the definition of friends for us when this is done.
Right.
Okay, that's,
I'm going by numbers. The
Yeah.
friends, I don't know who friends
No.
is. I'm going by numbers.
There was another hand raised in the back, I thought. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, Dave Hardy, Carriage Lane. So, the new revised language, Mr. Dewey would not be able to have an extended group of family and friends, is that correct?
Right. He would not even be allowed to really have this equipment.
So, why would he not be subject to the revised language?
Because he applied for a building permit before that language was passed.
And-
So he falls under the old code.
And we have record of that application in writing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah.
The one thing to address Jane's question and Mary and Dave, is the ordinance change that we're talking about was definitions of the types of, the impact of recreation. So some of the charitable events that have been described would not be recreation, but this was a recreational area, so it fell under a very specific part of our code.
Right, that's a good point.
Yes.
Suzanne Kaplan, Dewey's Lane. Were the proper permits issued, applied for and issued to build the specific structures that make up the obstacle course?
The proper permits were applied for, and we're going back and figuring out what they need to do to prove that they can build, or could have built those structures. That involves some debate under building codes, but we're still working that out.
So that's not finalized?
Well, it's real close to being final. There's certain things he has to do. I don't know whether he'll agree to do it, but there's certain things that he has to do. And that's all existing law. No one's changing any law here at all.
Yes, sir.
I guess I'm just confused. He applied for permits, built the equipment, and now you're reviewing the permits.
He applied for the permits after he built the equipment.
Cart before the horse here.
Well, it is. It is. He should have applied for the permits before. And we gave him a cease and desist letter based on the fact that he didn't have permits.
So
That's
is
the
the
equipment
equipment allowed to stay
cease.
there?
So he didn't cease when you?
Yeah, he ceased. He ceased. There's been no special events out there since we gave him that letter.
No.
I'm talking about the
Folks, you gotta raise your hand or we'll never get
So
through
if
this.
he applied for building permits, and he wasn't granted building permits, but he still built everything, 100 and something structures, then anybody in this township can build anything they want without building permits and just ask for it after the fact? Why wouldn't they be required to take everything down? And then start all over with the process?
It doesn't work that way. There's a process to
Obviously.
use. There's a process to use to go backwards, like any other homeowner that may have not realized they needed a permit. We're not going to tell them, tear this down. We're going to tell them, you need to prove to us this stuff is installed properly, it's got proper foundations, there's no impact on stormwater. There's certain things any homeowner would have to prove if they built something without a permit. It's much more difficult and much more expensive to do it after the fact than it is to do it before the fact.
Yeah, but comparing somebody putting a deck on the back of their house with someone that's building over 100 structures on Route 401 and making it look like they both have the same impact and significance, I just think that that's not a fair comparison. Someone should have realized what was going on, and someone should have taken corrective action.
Well, I often think myself, how did anyone not see it going up? You drive down the road, it's so obvious. I wasn't around then. I don't know how we couldn't have seen it going up.
Well, unfortunately, we were, and unfortunately, some neighbors have felt they've been forced to sell their house because they had no choice. So it's just unfortunate, but I understand. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Since the permits were applied for afterward, is there any sort of fines that are going to be happening? Because all this did happen, it's now costing more. Is it costing the township more to go back and review these?
It's costing him more.
So it's not coming out of our pockets. Is there any fines that are going on for having built it? Because
Without approved permit.
without approved permits, because wouldn't there be, is there going to be any financial sanctions?
There will be, but it won't amount to a lot. It's only a $600 fine.
Per structure?
We're trying to get them compliant with the law. They have an argument that what they do is private recreation. And we're avoiding that argument by what they're doing. So if we start picking on things that don't achieve anything for us, then it's going to be harder to fight over the ultimate issue, which is private recreation versus commercial recreation. So you have to have some common sense in this interpretation. Yes, sir.
Doug Pippin, Phillips Lane. How about compliance?
Compliance, whatever we agreed to, we'll have a compliance paragraph in the agreement. And I'm going to ask for more than what we're allowed to do under current zoning. I'm going to ask for something with more teeth in it.
Yes, sir.
Mike Emsworth, I live right nearby. So, am I getting this straight that he's not allowed to use any of that equipment for family and friends right now because the permits are not complete and it hasn't been inspected?
Right now, we're focusing on the commercial use.
Okay.
And again, there's details that I have to work out. And in the meantime, we're trying to work together to come up with what the township ultimately wants, which is compliance with their zoning ordinance. So that's the goal. We're making advances. The meeting you had the other night was helped tremendously, which is why I wanted him to meet with the residents to see how big an issue this was, so they can get their arms around it and realize what impact they're having on their neighborhood. And based on that, we've made great progress. So we're moving the right direction. I'm optimistic it'll be worked out, but there's still things I have to work out. There's still details.
Yes, against the law.
I have concerns about the danger factor. I feel it's truly an eyesore. You can't drive by there that go, what the heck is going on here? And it's a bad turn already. I don't know if there's anything that fits into, any legal issue there, but I do think that there's a danger factor. There have already been some accidents that we know were caused by people doing just that. Is there some way that we can, I think it sounded like they were willing to put more barriers up or screening up there, but is there any way we can enforce that?
Yes, that'll be after Joe gets done with his fine tuning.
I'm not going to
It
get...
sounds like they'll be allowed to keep it.
Yeah, I'm not going to get enough buffering because of the contours of the land. I'm not going to get enough buffering to hide this thing. It'd be almost impossible. We know the contours of the land out there. People are going to see it.
Yes, ma'am.
Did he have a permit to do anything? Was there a permit for any of the structures?
Not yet.
Then why is he should not have, be grandfathered into the old ordinance?
He applied for the permit.
But they weren't granted. He doesn't have any.
It doesn't have to be granted.
When did
Only
he apply
applied
for the
for.
permit?
I'm just trying to get this straight. If I apply for a permit to build something, I don't get the right to build that until after that permit's been approved, correct?
Right, but you vest what you're
So
proposing.
he's in violation of that.
But yes, but what you vest is the zoning ordinance that was in effect when you applied. Just like when you apply to develop something, you file a preliminary plan, it's the zoning ordinance in effect at that time, not anything that you pass in the future. And that's very clear. That's not a debate, legal issue. That's very clear to the law.
We know this is a touchy subject, and we're giving it our best effort to accomplish all your wishes. So if anybody has anything to add, I think I've heard it all. But Sarah, do you have something?
Real quick, so when, Joe, you're talking about how it's built, are there standards, safety standards that you're looking at in regards to each of the 100 installations, whether
Right.
it's safe for anybody to use. Okay, good. The other thing is, when Mr. Dewey and his lawyer came in on June 20th, it was the art school road property was tied together in conversation with the Dewey's Lane. When they had their town hall meeting, they were very careful to want to separate those two. Are they still keeping them separate?
They are doing what we requested them to do at the other property. And they're applying, and for whatever extent they need zoning relief, they're going forward with that.
And was that zoning relief changing it from a religious use to an educational use?
Right now, they are making the argument that they can keep it as a religious use and all these other uses would be approved. I'm resisting that argument to a degree, and it's actually in their best interest, I think, to get it flipped over to an educational use. It broadens the type of educational use they can use it. So that's an open question. That's as of Friday, still an open question.
Good. And you haven't been here for a couple of meetings when I believe the Historic Resource Committee expressed a concern about the Phillips window that's been removed from the church, and it's a contributing factor to the historic character of a National Register
We're getting off the
subject.
topic there,
I
Sarah.
just want Joe to know about that.
I wasn't familiar with that.
Right, so there's a concern there that they want to move.
Take that up with Edgar. We're off topic there. Yes, sir.
As far as blocking the view, you may want to consider having them plant pine trees atop the berm that's there.
He offered, and I do think that'll be at a later discussion, he offered several things. Plantings was one, even plantings on, say, your property, because of the elevation, it might be, faster coverage. That is open. They offered it, whether that happens or not, I assume it will.
They made a lot of offers when they were trying to get it commercial recreational use.
Right.
What's still on the table, I'm forcing them to comply with the ordinance. That's my goal. And we're making progress at that, and I'm optimistic we're going to get there. But with some of the things he put on the table, he's not required to do. So I'm making sure he does what he's required to do. And then if there's more than that, that's fine if he wants to do it, but it's not going to be part of the township's requirement. We have to go by our ordinance.
Right.
But even if we did look at buffer, we were talking about some flexibility with use, and it wasn't a really good way to buffer it. It's really going to hide it from everyone.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate all your hard work, but is there a timeline that you have? Just like, I don't want to hold you to, at the end of the month, but is it like 2 months from now that you think?
We have a cease and desist letter out there that has to be appealed within the 30-day appeal period. We have extended that. We take it all the way up to the 28th or 29th day. If we see him making progress, we bump it out another 30 days. So we control the time. We have that ability. I see progress. I probably will extend it another 30 days or so. But when I stop seeing progress, when I stop seeing movement on their part, then they got to appeal, we're off and litigate. So there is something hanging over their heads that is within our control.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, in the back.
So he was trying to get permission to have the township understand his interpretation of existing zoning. Does he have the option to actually flat out request different zoning, to make that no longer R3 and make that a commercial zone property? And if so, what's that process and how would we be notified to voice our concerns?
What you described is a map change. And a map change, you'd see the property posted, you'd see advertisements. But this board, when people apply for a zoning change like that, not a text change or a map change, they have the option of whether to have a hearing or not. The township's not forced to ever have a hearing. They're not forced to ever respond to them, because that's a legislative function. It's not a judicial function, it's legislative. So just like you would write to your local representative and say, please pass a law to do this, that effectively is what that request is, asking us to pass a law to enable their property to be zoned differently. So we don't need to respond to it. There's no time constraints. They never even have to have a hearing. So that's strictly within the discretion of the board, and there's no appeal from that. So it's just like a letter to your state. So I would hope, I'm sure, I know that this township will notify people, even if that letter comes in, but the way things look right now, you can imagine the board granting a hearing.
Yes, sir.
When you talk about changes that they make to keep extending the time frame, what kind of material change impresses you enough to say, okay, we'll give you another 30 days? Because I have a feeling that if he does minimal changes, then he can drag it out, and then the neighbors are all affected by it. So what's
Well,
your description of
one
that?
change resulted by him changing some of the things he's doing at the schoolhouse, or at the church. There were two components to this. So we were negotiating both at the same time. There was progress being made there, so we were continuing because of that. We continued one time, so he would have the ability to do a meeting with the neighbors. I requested he do the meeting with the neighbors. And then we had to continue it again when scheduling went beyond that 30-day period. So that's how it's evolved. The most significant progress that I've seen so far is a call that I got last Wednesday, saying that if they get permits, that they won't pursue a commercial use. And then I called him back today and I said, what do you mean by friends? How many friends do you have? And he said he's going to have to get back to me on that. So we're still going to work out little details.
Thanks.
But again, we won't comply with the code. That's my goal. I will comply with the code.
In the back.
What's the educational space for?
What's that?
What's the educational space for?
They're doing various things at the church. There are various educational opportunities that they say fall in with what the church has been used for in the past. And they've come forth with all sorts of things.
But they have some homeschoolers there.
Yeah, they have homeschoolers there. They have homeschoolers there. They have certain classes that teach people certain things. And some mishmash of stuff. Some of the things they proposed, we said, didn't fall within that definition, and they just said they won't do it.
You know, I just want to say one comment. You had the gentleman in the middle said this is a touchy subject. And I take offense to that because this is more like a Frankenstein land project that threatens to loot the intangibles that we've all invested in this community. Okay? So I think that we have to be clear that unless we get an understanding of exactly how he's tying this together, he could, in a little ways, like a virus or like bamboo, start to infiltrate little pieces of this community and slowly affect it in ways that we're no longer going to be able to put a boundary around it.
Well, we started with changing the definition of private recreation. So no one else in the township is going to be doing what he did. So it's, the way zoning works is sometimes you discover flaws in your ordinance and you fix them. You can't do anything about what occurred, but you can make sure it doesn't happen in the future. So at this point, that's the best we're working with. And all that I can really do is make them comply with the law. That's all I can really do. What property he buys and what he tries doing with it will have to comply with our law.
This gentleman.
I just want to say that I work with 30, 35 townships and boroughs in the county. And I know how difficult this job is for supervisors and council people. You're making generational decisions when you make these type of decisions. And I believe that this is a generational decision. If this is allowed to go forward any further than it is, I see some, other people doing the same type of thing. So we're sort of pleading with you here.
Well, I agree with you.
But you've got a lot of neighbors here who actually been very calm. They weren't so calm the other night when we had a meeting, okay? That,
I'm
people
grateful
are
for that.
emotional about this, and I'm trying to be calm myself, okay? So, I have to pass this every day, a couple times a day. It's an eyesore, it's nothing else. But putting up a few trees, or doing this or doing that, a landscape plan, is not going to change that. It is still going to be what it is. It's a distraction, it's an attractive nuisance. Someone's going to get hurt there at some point, because it's not protected. It's got a 5-foot fence. I'm 108 years old and I could jump that fence. So, some kid's going to get in there at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're going to get injured because it's not properly permitted, not properly engineered, And we're pleading with you not to make the wrong generational decision.
Well, I can assure you that certainly came within our discussions, that if this guy does it, who else is going to be able to do it, and to what extent, and what kind of interpretation that will have on the entire township. And being exposed to 30 different municipalities, you know how important it is to look in the future as well as in the past. And we're doing our best to do that. But again, I'm trying to bring him into compliance with our code that applies to him. That's our goal, that's my goal, that's my job. We're not compromising. We're trying to bring him into compliance with what our ordinances say. And we're not writing in ordinances for him, you know, we're not rezoning anything. That was never on the table, was never discussed. It was always, how do we bring you into compliance? And then there was a debate they were making about them already being in compliance. I'm glad that they've conceded that argument. That's a major step in this process.
Yes, sir, in the back.
Yeah, so the structures are made out of wood, right? And they're going to deteriorate over time, probably quite quickly. What does the ordinance say about him rebuilding any structure that deteriorates?
And, well, first of all, if structures are deteriorating, it would fall under the property maintenance code, and we'd be requiring him to get rid of it or rebuild it.
So he can just rebuild it because he had it already?
Yeah, at the same spot.
So, yeah.
Any
Yeah,
other
get another
comment?
permit?
No.
No, I understand that, I'm talking about in the future.
In the future,
So that means he can just keep
if he
rebuilding
repairs,
these
if
things.
he repairs what's already there, there's no permit for that.
Can he build any new structures
No,
in the future?
no, he can't. The, equated to a swing set, if the swing set's in disrepair, you fix it, you don't get a permit for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
My name is Deborah Burkbeck. I live at 2140 Conestoga Road. I'm directly, my husband and Bob and I are directly across the street from this. We were never consulted about how we felt about this being built. We have to look at it every day. We have a very high elevation to our house. Nothing he can plant there will now block the view. Our house value has been reassessed twice because we refinanced mortgages, and our house value has literally plummeted approximately $150,000 since he built the structure. We're not going to want to live there forever because our children are growing, and when children grow, they leave home. We are gravely concerned about our ability to one day sell our property now that he has that built there. So my question is, why wasn't anyone consulted before the permitting process? And if he does not receive those permits, is there any way that he would be required to take it all down?
If he doesn't receive those permits, we will be in extensive litigation for several years, and he will be going for the commercial use. That's what we have to prevent. Well, not only is it expensive, but every litigation has a chance of failure. So it's a factor to be considered.
What do we have to lose? We're already there.
So let me just clarify, there's no way that he would be required to take those structures down.
If he does not get a permit, we'll enforce our cease and desist order. He will claim that a commercial use is permitted, and he will claim he has been and will continue to use it commercially. We'll go to court. The judge will say yes, or a judge will say no.
And there's no way we would be able to uphold the zoning just based on the
We
fact that
very well
it's
may be
there.
able to, or we may not. The judges do, yeah, I can only tell you what the law is. I can't tell you what judges want to do, unfortunately, because judges continue to always surprise people with their decisions.
So in a nutshell, he's presented us with an ultimatum. Either the township approves his permits, or he's going to apply for a rezoning.
Not apply for rezoning. He'd be challenging our cease and desist order. He doesn't have a right to a rezoning. He would allege that the current zoning permits him to use it the way he was using it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, folks? We do take this very, very seriously, and David, Mike, I'm sure we all feel your concerns and have read them and we believe we're part of the community too.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. And if there's nothing else, we're going to move on. Under old business, the Buttonwood Lane Bridge repair.
I move that the board approve Supervisor engineer's scope of services for the repairs to Buttonwood Lane Bridge, total around $17,000.
Okay, if nobody heard that, we had a motion on the floor to approve a Cedarville Engineering bid to do professional services on the Buttonwood Lane Bridge in the amount of $17,500. And there was a second. Sarah, yes.
Does that mean to do the planning, the engineering plans?
It's more than that. Brian Kulikowski is our engineer from Cedarville.
BK, as we call it.
So why don't you explain what this does?
Good evening. The proposal for Buttonwood is to perform the structural analysis testing, which is a whole list. It's coring, it's ground penetrating radar, it's some work to figure out the flange thickness and material testing of the flanges of the actual beams that were used to construct it. And then it's also using that testing report to then structurally engineer and design the repair of the bridge. So that is just for those services, structural engineering and also the structural testing.
So there's going to be another one of these coming our way once we know what has to be done for construction management and other services.
Yes.
So repair or replacement as needed?
Repair. This is strictly to repair the Buttonwood Lane Bridge. This is not to replace it.
Well, what if some of those tests showed you how bad it was and the answer was to replace it?
Then we will have to revisit the planning.
And we're assuming this bridge is repairable. We have to start someplace. So.
Based upon the structural analysis that was already performed earlier this year, the structural engineer is confident this bridge can be repaired in place.
And what's the life of that repair?
Confidently, if we enter into what we should be doing, which is a maintenance program, which is the bridges will be inspected annually, and then any noted repairs were conducted in appropriate times, not just let it sit. This bridge should last an indeterminate amount of time, at least 20 years, if not longer.
Well, the inspection's not going to make the bridge last. The inspection's going to find more problems that we have to continue to repair, correct? And that would make the bridge last long.
This repair is designed to bring the bridge up as high as we can get it to be loaded, is what the idea is. So the only way you're going to get a complete
guaranteed lifespan is by a new bridge.
Yes.
So what is the weight limit that we're trying to achieve?
Until we test it and do the design, we don't know, but we're trying to get as high as we possibly can.
We don't have any idea. I mean, is that going to be high enough to get a large fire truck over there?
That is the goal. It's the intent. Until the testing is complete, I can't give you any. Only certainty I can give you is that once it's repaired, if the repair is maintained, that your lifespan should be at least 20 years, if not longer.
But when did you go to law school, by the way?
I did it.
So that would be back to the, if it can't achieve the weight limits that you want, then we're in the replace business.
Well, replacement may not be work either, but we need to do this first.
Yeah. Well, but we know the number, don't we? You guys were talking about it had to be a fire truck with a tank full of water or something.
So we would, I mean, that's why I asked you, I'd like to know that number, what that is. I have no idea what it is.
What a fire truck is?
Yes.
It's about 35 tons.
Is that a tanker?
Yes. It's about 35 to 40 tons in that range.
Is that doable with that type of bridge?
There's a level of confidence, yes, but there's no certainty.
You want me to cross it down?
I don't don't see any other way to do it. Do you, David, or am I?
No.
I need Brian.
Brian, you went and said, this is this always, when I'm speaking to other Brian, it's always confusing. You said we're going to get it as high as we can, okay? I would also suspect that based on what was just said, that there's also a minimum that if we can't get it above here, then we're going to have to go to replacement. Is that the case? And do we have a number of what that minimum is of, if we can't get it above here, we're going to have to replace the bridge?
There has not been, to my knowledge, a discussion of a minimum weight limit. Currently it was 10 tons, and it was just recently lowered to 7 based upon the structural assessment. Our goal is to get it as far above 10 tons as we can, and we may be able to get it to an open highway loading rating. But we don't, until we go through the process and then see what the condition is. And it's also a function of cost. That the structural engineer is confident that this rating can get significantly higher than it currently is and was. He just can't give me it's going to be HS20, it's going to be open highway loading. That number is not known yet.
I can understand he doesn't know where he can get it to. That makes a lot of sense. That's why you're doing the testing. I think we've done some core boring of it already.
No.
Okay. I know there was something about core boring a couple meetings ago. But if you don't know what the minimum is that you want to take it to, then you never are in a position of, do we repair this or do we replace this? And that goes back to the question that Mike has of how long is it going to last after we get it rebuilt? And I think there should be some number of, and the board should know of, okay, we're going to do this testing. And if it doesn't get above this point, then we're going to be looking at replacing a bridge or having some other decision point coming on. But this nebulous thing of, oh, well, we're going to test it and we're going to get it as high as we can, well, say it doesn't get to a fire truck going over it. Are we still going to take that? Or are we going to replace the bridge then? Where are we going with this?
Well, that's a discussion that will come up after the testing is done. Then it'll come back to us and say, we think we can get it to 14 tons.
Is that good enough?
Is that good enough? And he'll explain whether it's going to be good enough for a fire truck because of the long axles and the combined rate. And we'll see how close we get. And then we're going to have to make a decision.
Are we going to get that coming out of the work that you're doing?
Yes.
How high we can get it up?
Yes.
Fine, thank you.
Any other questions for Brian? He loves being here, by the way, so please ask away. Okay. We have a motion, no other questions? So all those in favor of this proposal?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have another one, the Hollow Road Bridge repair. That is the bridge that's about a half a mile away from Horseshoe Trail?
I think it's closer, yeah, it's about a half a mile.
It's that S curve.
Yes.
I move that the board approve the Cedarville Engineering scope of services for repairs to Hollow Road Bridge in the total amount of $22,750. Second.
Any questions? Brian? Oh, come on, don't be mad at me, I'm joking with you.
Well, I'm also working. What are we trying to come out of with the Hollow Road Bridge? What are we doing with it?
Hollow Road, when we did our road inventory inspection for the road report that was just discussed earlier this month, we discovered that the bottom of that bridge is actually falling off. The concrete is spalling and separating from the concrete beams and has been falling into the creek into Birch Run for a substantial amount of time. So the beams have been exposed, they're starting to rust. This proposal is to go in, take down any more of the concrete this is to do the engineering and also manage the bidding and manage the construction of it. So this is the full gamut. This is all construction service, administration services, plus the engineering to determine what needs to be done to the beams that are there, and what areas of concrete need to come down, and then what the repair is, structural design of the repair to actually repair the bottom of the bridge. Also, the deck of the bridge has to be repaired because it's letting water through that drips through the bridge when it rains. So we have to repair the top to stop the water from going through the bridge, which is causing the bottom to fall away.
So in other words, what we're doing here is we're kind of doing, we're finding out the problem similar to what we're doing with Buttonwood. We're coming up with a design to fix it, and then the construction management to fix it?
Yes.
Okay, and I guess the one question I've got here is, you came up with this number that's going to be $22,000?
That's for the engineering services, not
Yeah.
to repair it.
Okay, and my question comes up then is there a need to bid this because it's above the $19,000 whatever the magic number is?
Well, bid
You're
the,
talking about this.
no,
This proposal. Joe, answer that.
This is a professional service, so it's not subject to bidding requirements.
Okay.
The construction of it will be bid, put through the bidding process, and we'll be using Penn bid to do that.
Somewhat related is, do you have any just ballpark feel for what the repair will end up coming up at?
The ballpark I've been given from the structural engineer is around 70 to 80,000.
Okay.
Sarah?
And the reason the cost of this professional service work is almost $5,000 or is over $5,000 more than the other is because it's a two-lane bridge, or how come?
Because this also includes the inspection services to inspect the construction while it's happening.
Okay,
It
so-
includes preparing the bidding documents and managing the bidding.
And the Buttonwood doesn't do that.
Yes.
So, okay, because I was thinking this is a lower bridge, so I was just, thank you.
There's more.
Buttonwood will be more expensive after they do their analysis.
Thanks. Indubitably.
Any other questions? And I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is purchase of a police vehicle. Does somebody want to read this motion? I guess Mike does.
I move the township purchase the 2016 Ford Police Interceptor sedan on the CoStar as quote, in the total amount of $37,442, which includes decommissioning the 2011 Ford Crown Vic.
Erica, you've done some research on this. You want to explain to the audience what this is all about?
Oh, sure, did you, I need a second?
Yes, second. Thank you.
Sure. I've been working with the chief in reviewing his fleet status, and it occurred to me that the purchase for 2016 becomes a little more important due to the fact that there's a car right behind this car that is close to meeting its maximum reliable useful life. And when we look at that, you look at the age of the car, the total miles, and the true value and worth of a police car once it reaches that age. So we are looking at, in 2017, if we do not purchase a vehicle now, 2 that will be up for a maximum usable, reliable service life. The one at 100,000 miles and currently at 92,000 miles. And with the current fleet status and just the service needs of the police department, for me, looking at next year, it's compounding a need for the department, and we're looking at a CoStar's purchase. So in looking at next year, the budget's in a stable shape as far as the police department budget is concerned.
Any questions for Erica? Brian?
The life of the police vehicle, I was speaking to a friend of mine that's in the car business recently, and she mentioned that cars have gone from being 120,000 to 180,000, I'm going to say, for ordinary people. And apparently for police vehicles, it's a 100,000 number.
Right around there.
How is that number, how has it been developed?
You take that number and you look at what the value of it is at that point. The police car just gets more wear and tear, more unpredictable Movement obviously with responding to emergencies, going in terrain that sometimes you have to just because of the nature of that business. So that wear and tear adds to a useful life year for a police car versus a regular vehicle that you would use in just daily life. So when you take that year, there's about an average of 6,000 miles per year that these police cars are added every year. So with the fleet status, if you look at each year, you can predict when it's going to cost more to maintain that vehicle. And currently, the vehicle that is looking to be replaced is at that point.
What is the value of the vehicle that's going to be replaced right now? The estimated value?
Just at,
$3,000.
yeah, $2,100 to $3,200.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And it should be noted that there was $2,700, over $2,700 spent on maintenance of that
Correct.
vehicle in just the first half of this year.
Correct.
Any other questions? Art?
What kind of a car is this?
This is a super duper car, you should see it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's a Ford sedan police interceptor, I don't know, other than that, I got a picture of it. Does that answer your question?
Okay. As long as it's not another pickup truck.
No.
No.
No. Any other questions? Then all those in favor? Aye. Next is item number 12. The refinancing opportunity discussion. Michael Wolf is here. Thank you for bearing with us. And Sid, we could have put you at the front, but we wanted you to...
Well, thank you for putting me as close to the front as you could under new business. Mr. Chairman, there's a man coming after me who came from Harrisburg. And so if it's all right with you, I'll give my spot to him so he can get on his way.
Okay.
I'll take the second spot.
Okay, that's fine.
I only have to go to Villanova.
Scott, right?
Scott.
Is Scott here? Oh, good.
Scott's got a couple with him too. Got a couple with. I apologize for my bent over posture. See, I pulled my back out over the weekend, so I'm a little hunched over today. Thank you for your kind gesture.
I know you'd do it for me if I were in Harrisburg.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much.
Lawyers never do that.
Lawyers don't do that. No, finance guys do.
They don't get paid hourly.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, Scott, what do you got for us?
All right, well, we were asked to come this evening to talk about some valuation services that might be applicable here to the township for your sewer system. So we just wanted to spend a couple minutes going over this. Good news is we're not going to go over the whole thing, so we don't need a whole lot of time. But just to introduce ourselves a little bit, and then as far as what the valuation may entail and the timing of it all. So again, with me, John Fry, my colleague, and Ben Kappenstein helps us along with this service that we do provide. So real briefly, on page 2, just a little background on who we are. Most of the days we spend our time running around the Commonwealth, looking at debt transactions, investments, pension-related issues, other strategic consulting work. But one of the other things that we also get into and specialize in is utility services that we'll focus more on here, whether it's financing of utility services, evaluation of utility services, monetizing them, and we have a special focus on that aspect. So again, page 2 just kind of gives you a highlight of where we rank among other financial advisors and in different sectors of the space that we do operate in. Page 3.
Could I take you back?
You sure
Because
can.
the audience is listening to you, but they didn't see this. Where exactly does that leave you ranked in the United States?
Number 1. Yes.
Cute shot.
So you see over on the left-hand side, there's quite a few categories where we're number 1, and we have the next slide, slide 3, shows you where we rank in the utility space, water, sewer, and gas. National, and this is just for the first half of 2016, that's where we are, again, in the bottom left-hand corner, and then on the right-hand side, just focused on Pennsylvania, where we rank, and again, number 1 in the utility space for Pennsylvania. So again, because of our our involvement in the utility world, we also, again, have a focus in public-private partnerships. Whether or not it makes sense, whether it's for a parking system, whether it's for new bridges. We're involved in some bridge transactions across the Commonwealth. We worked on the state contract for all their bridge replacements, and we're also working at various county levels as well. So again, sometimes they make sense, sometimes they do not, but we come in and kind of look at, number one, what is an estimated value, and number two, does it potentially make sense to do something in a given community? So again, we do have that national practice as well, a lot of experience behind us in looking at public-private partnerships. Page 4, every engagement that we enter into, everyone's unique. We always like to think outside the box. So the one on page 4, the transaction that we worked on in the city of Allentown, a very large sewer and water system, kind of very complex concession lease agreement where they did not sell their system. Again, it was a long-term lease. First of its kind procurement process that we pioneered, worked incredibly well. It won a couple awards. And on the left-hand side here, you see the Bond Buyer Deal of the Year a few years ago. So again, we were very proud of that. It was a very unique transaction, kind of very large and complex. And again, it was, I think the reason that we won that award was, again, because of the process that we developed. And again, it worked out very well for our client. You can see they received a substantial amount of money. The third bullet point on page 4, around $220 million, along with a decent amount.
If you do that for us, we'll name this building.
Yeah, just to kind of set expectations, that's probably not going to be the case at West Vincent, but we'll definitely do our best to get you the most bang for the buck if you want to head in that direction. Page 5, as far as, if the value looks appropriate and it kind of makes a lot of sense for the community, what are your options available? And that's other things that we look at. Does it make sense just to keep it as you have it? No change at all. Kind of that's the public ownership on the top one. Or does it make sense to do some kind of operating agreement or a concession or a sale if it's applicable? So we come back and kind of show you all the different options and what makes sense for your given community here. There's no right or wrong answer. It really just depends on what you're looking for and if the system kind of meets the need. So we don't come in with any preconceived notion. Every situation is a little bit different, and we want to listen to you as far as what your needs are and what your interests are and what may make a lot of sense here in the community.
When you do the valuation, Scott, can you do the valuation based on sale and based on lease?
Yeah, we have different models that kind of have different factors that we can change that factor in different kind of arrangements. So page 6. As far as why a community may consider some type of monetization. Again, upfront payments that you could potentially receive to defease debt, fund pension, other capital projects that may be in the horizon for the township, some kind of annual payment stream. In some instances, there's been a lot of deferred maintenance and just kind of want to give that now to someone else to handle, and a lot of consent decrees. So again, every community is different. They have different reasons why they might consider doing this. There's not a one-size-fits-all here, but again, it's just kind of some of the common ones that we've been running across here in Pennsylvania.
Well, one thing I think the board should consider is that you're selling capital assets. You should put that money into other programs to purchase or repair capital assets such as roads, bridges, etc. You don't want to use it to balance your operating budget. You don't want to use it for short-term income. You want to go capital for capital because you're selling capital, so you should replace it with other capital.
Huge and perfect segue into page 7. Couldn't have said it any better. I mean, I think one of our philosophies is kind of going, if you want to move forward with the process, kind of getting the upfront proceeds is half the battle. The other half is how to spend the money the correct way. And there's been some horror stories across the country where they've basically used a large upfront payment to plug a budget hole for a given year. We don't want to see that happen here. We're obviously going to advise not to do that. I think the other team members would be advising the same. But that is just as critical as far as what you do with the money, in addition to how much money you actually
Just for the audience sake, we do not have a large budget hole.
That is, yes, very well-run township, no budget hole here that we saw either, so that's very good.
We'd like to have an air conditioner.
Might be able to find electricity that way.
But we got this one fixed, so.
So again, if you did want to proceed, page 7, we would spend more time on use of proceeds. Page 8, just to give you a quick illustration of the value, one of the ways that we add value in this transaction, again, we pride ourselves in the process that we involve here to move forward with the monetization. So one of the things that we implement is what's called a BAFO, or best and final offering, or best and final round. So when the bids come in and they're within, say, 10% of each other, the top two, we ask them to go back and sharpen their pencil, and everyone knows in advance, all the bidders, that this is a requirement and they may be asked to do this. So in Allentown's case, for example, on page 8, you see the first, the initial bids came in at $202 million from the one bidder and $211 million from the other bidder. Well, this BAFO kicked up the price by about $12.5 million on the one bid and $15 million on the other bid. So again, that's substantial. It took about a week to do, to delay things, to involve this, but it was well worth the money. Another kind of smaller system in suburban Philly area was for Springfield Township. Again, you see the top two bidders where they were about 12.2 million and 12.5 million, so they were very close in the bids. But then with the BAFO round, we saw an increase of about $2.5 million in the one bid and about $4 million from the other bid, so a 32% increase from that additional offering. We're not saying every one of these bids is going to result in this, but we do tend to see this implemented. We're working on a large transaction in the western part of the state right now, and again, very large numbers, but there a BAFO was not triggered. There was a substantial difference between number 1 and number 2, but it is a very worthwhile component to add in the process. Page 9 just kind of gets a little bit more into the process as far as kind of big picture. First, we do the analysis and valuation, whether or not it makes sense. Then the transaction development, where you send out the RFQs and the RFPs, solicit bids, and then the actual execution as well. So if you did want to proceed into further steps with this, we would come back and give you more detail as far as what those steps involve. Page 10, and who the key team members are to move forward. Obviously, you got the township and its legal counsel, P3 advisor, the public-private partnership advisor, which would be us if you chose to move forward. Special transaction counsel, probably an additional sewer consultant, and there's been new legislation passed and implemented recently for these kind of transactions, where now we need to engage other valuation agents and engineers if you wanted to take this to the final step. So again, we would talk more about the team members if and when the time was ready. But I think stage 1 is what we wanted to focus on this evening as far as moving forward. If you did want to go forward with evaluation, get an estimated range of what the system may be worth. That's what we call our stage 1. Again, we kind of create, get a lot of data together, come up with a evaluation, come back and talk to you about it to see if it does make sense to move forward. And then stages 2 and stages 3, we have on pages 12 and 13 to get into more of the process with the timing. And page 14, a draft timeline that if you did want to move forward, our goal would be to, if engaged right away, would spend a few weeks gathering the information that we need, consulting with your solicitor on some issues, then probably spend about 2 weeks trying to go through the valuation, and hopefully we'd be ready to come back in September. It may slip into October with that valuation, have a discussion, and then again see what your wishes may be after that part, if it makes sense to move forward with any of the additional steps. And again, below there on page 14 just gives you an overall general idea. Sometimes transactions can move very quickly, sometimes they take years to do. It just really depends on the circumstances. Here's just kind of a general timeline that maybe if you did want to proceed to the next steps, October through March would sort of be the bidding process, and then we actually close the transaction some point thereafter, depending on who the bidder may be, whether they're governed by the PUC or not, so there's variables to that. But this kind of gives you a high-level general timeline of what we're thinking from a timing aspect.
Can you go over your fee structure, phase 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, so I believe the engagement letter that we had sent before was strictly for phase 1 services, I believe. So that's the valuation. So there, it would be an hourly rate, but we have a cap of $7,500 that we put in this engagement to do the evaluation services. Sometimes we may also need to include an additional sewer consultant to help us with that. That's also included in our engagement letter, and that's also part of the $7,500 cap that we would propose to do this. If the hours come in less, we're obviously going to charge you less than the cap, but we felt that was a fair max to put on that. So then if you did want to proceed to the next steps, that's where we have different fee arrangements. We have some of our clients who say, we'll just continue on an hourly basis to go through the RFQ process where we try to garner some attention, see if there's interest in the system, shortlist the bidders, and then send out a more formal RFP for the bidders to respond to, and then ultimately get the transaction to closing. Some of our clients say just work on an hourly, bill us monthly for the engagement. We have another arrangement, because these transactions are not always successful. Sometimes they become very difficult, very complex, and maybe in the 11th hour, it may not make sense to move forward with it. So we also have a compensation plan where we basically defer stage 2 and stage 3 fees until the transaction closes. If the transaction does not close, we don't charge for stage 2 and stage 3. So again, we could get to the 11th hour, have a ton of hours put into it, the deal does not close, we do not charge for those. Now, for that kind of business risk, I'll call it, there's an additional amount that's added to that to compensate for the risk. That's something that, you know, if you wanted to move towards stage 2 and stage 3, we'd be happy to get you that proposal. It's a kind of a combination of the hours that we know typically are take to put in one of these transactions, and sometimes also based on the size of the transaction. So again, if and when that time comes, we'd be happy to get you that engagement letter. But right now, we just focused on stage 1, see if it actually makes sense for the township to proceed.
And in looking at a township this size, with the little bit that you know of the sewer system, what's the range you anticipate from start to finish for fees, with attorney's fees and everything involved?
Yeah, I would say for this size system, I mean, ours may be getting close to the $100,000 mark, possibly. The other fees, there would be your local solicitor, as well as probably special counsel. You could be looking at total fees, again, depending on the complexity, maybe $250,000 total. That's something that we would, it's, you know, again, every project evolves differently, but one of our jobs is to keep you up to date with where we think the fees are coming in, not only ours, but the other ones. Because at the end of the day, we don't want you to get a big pot of money, and then we haven't communicated with you for a year and say, oh, well, you just got X amount of money, but 3/4 of that is going out the door to pay fees. That's not a good transaction. We don't want that to happen. So again, we are here to kind of say this is where...
We don't want that to happen.
No. So we want to make sure everyone's happy with the transaction. But that generally, I mean, we've seen them a lot higher than that, but those are the transactions that go much longer, 2-3 years, and are extremely complex. But for this size system, that's probably in the ballpark.
As a piggyback to Joe's question, so after phase 1, the evaluation, we've got 7,500, and we'll have a number of what our system is worth, at least in our minds, and make an informed decision whether to spend $100,000, $200,000 and recapture that on the sale.
That's right.
And some of those fees comprising the 200, you can elect to have them deferred and not paid until the transaction actually does go through. How about the attorney in Philly? Does he get paid as we go, or is he part of that?
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily speak for him for this particular engagement, but we do work with a law firm out of Philadelphia on these transactions pretty closely, and similar arrangements, engagements. Sometimes they have a small monthly retainer, maybe $3,000 or so, to get them through the process, and then everything else is deferred until a successful closing. So a lot of times, well, I don't want to speak for the lawyer community, but in many instances you do not see that deferral or even kind of waiving of the legal fees, but this firm does do that, because again, they're cognizant of the fees and and budget pressures, and they want to see a successful transaction occur as well. So again, many times they ask for a small monthly retainer, but then the vast majority of their fee would be paid at closing, if it closes.
But they also get a percentage for the risk taken.
No, they typically do not. Now, they will have a higher hourly rate typically, but usually they do not have that additional kicker.
Lawyers aren't as smart as financial planners.
I don't know about that. Okay. You want to make a motion?
Yeah, what do we need to do this, John?
I need to move.
There'd be a motion that you pass hiring the DFM to do phase one, not to exceed 7,500.
Well, don't have that in there, but I can add it. I move that the board approve the agreement for financial advisor services as submitted for the valuation of the sewer plants not to exceed $7,500.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. Yes, George?
Can we put this booklet that these quotes are on the website? Or?
Do you mind if we take your work and put it on our website?
That's right.
We can send it to you, electronically,
Oh, okay.
so you don't have to scan it.
Yeah. Send it to Tammy, I guess.
I'll do that tomorrow.
Yes. Oh, excuse me, can you identify yourself? I haven't seen you in years.
Jim Hall. You're going to look at all of the sewer systems, the 6 or 7 of them we have in the township?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll look at all the assets that comprise the system.
How do you handle one that we don't have yet, but we have an agreement that we're going to have? It's not even built yet. How's that come in the evaluation?
It sort of depends on the details, but we can add that. I mean, that's,
Well, can you add it if it doesn't happen by the time that the settlement occurs?
yeah, I mean, there's ways to build into whether it's the asset purchase agreement or concession agreement, whatever document ultimately governs this transaction, there's ways to account for near-term things that are happening. Again, depending on the wishes of everyone, that every one of these transactions are customized. Everyone's different, and it's not uncommon to have work in process going on when the transaction closes, and you kind of divvy up all that, or, yeah, there's a project that's just about ready to start, how that's all handled. So, yeah, again, every situation is different, but we would try to embed as much of it into the valuation as possible. And if you did want to proceed to the next steps, we'd make sure that the township's treated well with how it ultimately comes out.
Jim?
John, I have a question on kind of the end game of this. You know, what's up for vote here is whether or not to spend the first tranche of money. Is that because the board has decided the township does need to privatize the public utilities?
I don't think the word that I would use is does need to. The previous board last year, was it that year? We decided that, well, I know for myself, I don't think it long-term that I view the township being successful as a municipal manager of septic systems.
I'm just trying to figure out, John, where we're going with this. This is a vote for the first step, but you never take the first step unless you know what the next steps are.
No, we're trying to see how much the systems are worth.
I understand, Mike, but so you're going to get a refinement of a number. You know the number is somewhere in a range based on some things. So the question is, do you want to privatize, monetize some valuation? I bet you could estimate it within 80%. That's probably not the strategic question. The strategic question is, should the township get out of this and monetize it? And if so, for what purpose? Where's this going? Where does this money go to?
After it's sold?
Right. We'd be doing this for a purpose, not just because we don't want to. And that's the part I don't quite get.
Well, if you look at our sewer systems, there's a few that carry themselves and there's a few that don't. So apparently we're not doing the best job as far as figuring out how much to charge the residents for their sewer systems that we've inherited through dedication. The money, if we do get money, there's been no decisions or discussion about that, what we do with it.
except
we do
Joe
have a
made a
couple-
I mean, we do have,
Bridges.
yeah, we do have some road work and stuff like that, I guess we could use it for, but I don't even know if it's gonna happen in that time frame anyway.
I'm just looking
Yeah, I
for
know.
a plan. We're on the first step on a plan, but there doesn't seem to be a plan, except maybe we're not so good with running the sewer system.
Well, but yeah, but I mean, if it doesn't make sense for us to run this business,
Might not,
sewer
yeah.
and water, then we should leave it to somebody else, and we take the money and we use it to pay down debt. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do.
One
To
thing that
make
we-
these, make the township more secure.
A major concern of mine is not only what Mike said, but 40 years down the road, when the basins start, or 20 years, when the basins start to fail, do we have the wherewithal and the capital to fix it at that point? Well, that's a rolling of the dice that personally, I think is really risky.
And we could, if we were pricing this out and building a capital reserve to handle those future expenses, which we haven't in the past. Now, we can, but we have to raise rates to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just voicing an opinion. I think we ought to have a plan for this versus let's see what things are worth. What we could all do, figure out where our house is worth, but you don't have a plan to
We
sell it. It
actually
doesn't
spent the
matter.
last year doing that, and got to a point where we're right back, and we need to evaluate the system.
Well, you never got the value.
No.
Well, the law changed about 2 or 3 months ago. That tremendously impacted the value of the system. So we were watching that and we were waiting for it to pass. That's why the delays occurred. But part of this process is figuring out how much we'll get, or at least a range. And then you'll look at, like I said, other capital improvements, roads, bridges, paying off debt, things of that nature. It's a 2-step process, and they're gonna help us analyze, maybe we wanna invest some money and see what interest we can get on that. And you wanna look at other capital improvements you wanna make. So it's all part of the process that you can't do without knowing what dollars you have to play with.
The plan of how to utilize the proceeds is extremely important, just as important. But yeah, as mentioned, most of our clients kind of start out the same way, is let's get a general feel of the range before we start spending a lot of your time and other folks' time figuring out some plan when you may not end up wanting to go forward with it anyway. So it's kind of get a general feeling of the number, and then, okay, we like this range, we're gonna go forward the process. Then we run parallel tracks with the process and also developing a more precise plan on how to spend the proceeds depending on how it may come out.
Thank you.
And you have, yes?
Yeah, when you guys went through this last year, when you talked about maybe leasing or selling this, what valuation did you get from those people when you consulted with them?
We've never
I
gotten an evaluation.
can't divulge to you. We were in negotiations with 2 water companies, and I can't divulge to you the numbers that are kicking around. Because we may be putting this on the street. I don't want any numbers on the street. I want to know what they think it's worth and we'll pay for it.
But you did receive numbers to compare and contrast with.
We received general numbers without any real serious study from either water company.
Okay.
But they gave us an approximate amount, and at that point, Steve and I, who are co-counsel on this, decided to wait for this new law to pass. Because before the law passed, you could not include pre-contributed capital as part of the rent structure when you go to PUC to try and get your money back through rates. So it put the water companies at a disadvantage over sewer authorities. Sewer authorities didn't have that issue, water companies did. So when Act 12 came along and was passed, it had a tremendous impact on this whole process. And we were waiting for that. I was monitoring that bill on a weekly basis. Because your entire system is pre-contributed capital. If a water company bought it, they'd get 0 credit for your capital because all the developers built it. We didn't build any of it. So that law was crucial to making this process even worthwhile. So the numbers that were kicked around with those 2 water companies are of no real significance at this point. But there were numbers. I can't share them with you, but there were numbers, but they're totally different than it would be today.
Right.
Then I take it this new law caused an increase in the value of the systems, or the amount that we might receive. Is that true?
Yes, now it's based on market value. It has nothing to do with pre-contributed capital.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Because, I've been asking this about once every week or month or something for a while, and so I'm glad
Really? I
it's
don't
moving
recall.
again. Do you want me to ask you a public comment just for old time's sake?
Sure. Any other questions? And we have a motion to approve this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Have a safe journey back to Harrisburg. It's only an hour and a half.
Thank you again, Mike.
Okay, I'm going to go back in the refinancing opportunity discussion with Michael Wolf. Thank you, Michael.
We passed out a few booklets electronically. Here's new booklets, so everybody has the same numbers in front of them.
Are they different than the?
There's some new pages that were never even in the booklet. I haven't changed the assumptions about interest rates.
Okay.
What we're discussing, folks, is refinancing of our current bonds to save money.
Good evening, my name is Michael Wolf from the firm of Benning and Scattergood. I'm not sure many of you will recognize me, but I've been coming to West Vincent since 1998. I started working with a township manager named Alan Heist, and we together worked on the financing of purchase of this land and financing this building. Those bonds mature in 3 years. That's how long they mature in 2018. I've helped the township with 4 major loans, starting with 1998. There was a 2003, a 2006, and the 2012, which is the only issue you have outstanding at this time, 2012. I want to alert you to an opportunity and begin a discussion of options. We don't have to make any decisions tonight. You can if you want to. As you know, when interest rates drop, it's not long before homeowners start thinking about whether it's economically to their advantage to refinance a mortgage. It's the same for townships and school districts. When rates drop, townships and their advisors start looking at their existing interest rates and can they be improved? Can the loans be refinanced? The booklet contains several graphs that you've seen before that shows how interest rates have declined over different periods of time. The first one goes back to 1979. The second one, Exhibit B in red, shows what's happened during the last 52 weeks. And then there's one that's sort of interesting, Exhibit C, shows in blue since 2008 how much lower rates are today, but it also shows that each time rates got low, there was some unforeseen event which caused them to spike upwards. And that's happened 3 times, beginning with the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers in 2008, an erroneous prediction by Meredith Whitney in 2011 that there were going to be a lot of municipal bankruptcies, which never occurred, and then discussion about what was called Fed tapering, when the Federal Reserve would begin to first start talking about not buying as many treasury bonds as they used to. But no matter which of these 3 graphs you look at, the answer is still the same. We now have the interest rates that we had in 1956. We have reached the 60-year low. And so that's why I'm here, is to bring that to your attention and show you what could potentially affect your 2012 bonds, and that's shown graphically on Exhibit B. There's 2 curves. The red line at the top are the interest rates you are scheduled to pay through 2031. There's about $7,500,000 outstanding. We could replace that red line with the blue line at today's interest rates. And the difference in debt service would have a value today, after all costs were paid, in today's dollars of about $217,000, which is about 3.7% of the amount of bonds that we would be refinancing. We're not going to refinance all the bonds. We're not going to touch 16, 17, and 18 for a variety of reasons, but then refinance 19 through 31 would be the idea. We'd be saving, as I said, about 3.7% of the refunded principal. the Government Finance Officers Association recommends that whenever that savings exceeds 3%, that the townships and other borrowers start thinking about whether advance refunding of this type would be in their best interest. So we're above the threshold. It's not a grand slam home run. It's not 10%. It's not 6%. It's almost 4%. The trick is to wait as long as possible, but not wait until interest rates rise. So you have to have an idea in your mind of when that might be. I've been wrong for 5 years. I've been saying rates are going up based on what economists have been telling me. So you don't have to feel like you're being stampeded into rushing into this, although I remind you that Exhibit C showed 3 times where we didn't see rising interest rates coming, and it would have wiped out the savings. So the savings is shown best with these pages that have the blue bars. If you look at page 3, page 3 shows that we financed those bonds I mentioned from 19 through 31. That's about 5.76 million of bonds that you would save between $16,000 and $17,000 a year. The gross savings over the life is close to $250,000, but since some of the savings comes way out in 2031, when a dollar is not going to be worth $1 anymore, we discount to today's dollars by using your cost of funds, which in this case is 2.28%.
Is there a call date for the 2012 bonds?
Yes, Joe, if you look at page 4, right behind the one we're just looking at, the bonds can be called away from the current owners 6/1/17. That's your first call date.
And was that issue in advance refunding?
A little piece was that the little piece that was in advance refunding ends in 18, which is one reason I'm starting in 19. Stay away from the little piece that was this building that was already advance refunded once before. You only get one bite of the apple.
Keeping it out of the taxable interest rate, though.
Beg your pardon?
You're keeping it out of the taxable interest rate.
That's right. There's no savings to be had on those early maturities, so I'm only doing the ones that save money, the ones with the higher interest rates, and I'm avoiding the first 3 years because they're not completely, but very slightly touched by the bonds for this building, which aren't retired until 2018.
So that keeps you using...
It allows us to advance refund as many of the bonds as we want from 18 or from 19 on. There's also no savings until you get a little bit further out. But the key for the board is that you only get to do this once between now and June of 17. And then when you issue those new bonds, let's say we do that this fall, those bonds also get a 5-year call. The bondholders are protected for 5 years. So the amount of the bonds that you do refund will get a new 5-year call, which would be sometime like 2021. So that would hurt your ability to prepay these new bonds. We're prepaying the old, we're allowed to, but you'll get a new call on the new bonds, and that 5-year call will make it difficult to prepay the new bonds. So if you're sitting on a lot of cash and you want to use it for refunding, you shouldn't refund everything, but you should think about which ones might be refunded with cash. I looked at your cash reserves. I didn't see tons of cash. At least these bonds are 80% open space bonds. So if you were using cash, you'd be using open space cash to defease or refund these bonds. I didn't see a lot of cash there. There's some balance, but you also have future projects coming. So
if we sold the sewer system and recovered enough money to pay off all of that, we'd be prohibited from doing that?
If you sold the sewer system, generated a lot more cash than I see in the accounts today, I imagine you probably could use it to pay debt, including open space debt. But if you had recently issued the new replacement bonds, you wouldn't be able to take them away from the bondholders and achieve your savings. They'd have to be put into an irrevocable escrow for 5 years. And at today's interest rates, there'd be terrible negative carry on doing it.
Is there any way, everything bond issue I've ever been involved with is a 5-year call date? Is there anything that's a 3-year call date?
There is, but you pay for that. The Pennsylvania has the most lenient call in the United States with 5. So if you start to try and push the holders of the bonds to something that's even more disadvantageous to them, which means possibly having their bonds taken away from them even sooner, they're going to demand a higher interest rate. So we wouldn't look at that unless we had to. We would investigate it, if the circumstances warranted.
I was under the impression that when you do an advance for funding of something that was already an advance for funding, that it sparks market rate interest, or taxable interest, not
Right,
untaxable.
but again, that's good, that's right. But we are avoiding any of those bonds that have already had that advance for funding.
For 3 years.
Because they end. I'm not sure which of the bonds in 16, 17, and 18 are the ones, but if I avoid all of them, I've avoided any bonds that were ever advance for funded.
Because they're not getting paid off.
Yeah, they're not getting paid off. So if you look real quickly at page 3, I know I love this, but it's possible that not everybody loves it quite as much as I do, I'm told. If you look at page 3, it shows the new debt service in the second column, and then it shows something called existing debt service for 3 years. That's much smaller than the currently scheduled debt service because you've gotten rid of all the bonds after. But that little bit combined with the new produces the net new, and that's where you compare for the savings on in the middle of page 3. So it's nice to have this opportunity to think about. Rates change every day. The last page of this new booklet is a potential calendar, and it shows that no matter how fast we work, the fastest we could be ready to lock in these new rates would be probably the end of September. It would take 6 weeks to go to Moody's, reaffirm your existing very good rating that you have, AA3, and we can't sell bonds until we have that new rating. And the earliest that could happen would be the end of September. If you were in the mood to, we could set up for you to adopt a parameters ordinance at your next meeting, which would specify that we would go forward if certain targets were met. And then we would be able to sell bonds between meetings instead of waiting for a meeting. And according to this schedule, we could be locked by the end of September and settled, and everything done by Halloween, by the end of October. So let me pause here. I'm sure there's questions, but if there aren't, I won't be insulted.
Are there any upfront costs?
No, there are no upfront costs, and we try and manage it such that you will not incur any costs unless there's a successful transaction. All the professionals work on a risk basis, but I have to be careful about when and how I send the package to Moody's, because after a certain amount of time, that triggers a bill. So I want to be sure that the rates are going to hold long enough to get the rating, incur the bill, and not lose the transaction. That's the dicey part.
What are the potential costs, Mike?
The costs are outlined in a crude way on page 1 of the blue. And they're composed of 2 parts. Under uses of funds on page 1, there's my fee called the underwriter's discount, which for a transaction close to $6 million would be in the neighborhood of $44,000. And then there's $50,000 of other fixed costs, which include bond counsel, other legal, printing, the rating fee from Moody's, which is about $13,000 or $14,000. And most of the money is going, to the escrow, which pays off the bonds in June of 17.
Now, there's no risk of an expense for us unless this goes through. Is that correct?
The only risk is, and it's minor, but it has happened to me where the package is submitted to Moody's, we get the rating, and then rates move against us. We can delay paying the Moody's bill for 90 days, but we ultimately end up having to pay the Moody's bill.
And how much is the Moody's bill?
It's about $13,000.
Oh, geez.
It's only happened once or twice, but they give, you know, what happened was we ultimately did a bond issue the next year, and when rates came back, and we paid 2 Moody's bills out, reimbursed ourselves.
Okay, so our risk would be 13,000, approximately.
Yeah, that's right. The other people have the control over their, that's the only one I can't control, is the Moody's.
My fees are paid at settlement too, they're also contingent.
We did do this for the township, a very similar thing in 2006. It was successful.
And how long does it take Moody's to do this?
They take 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay.
Now, lately, there hasn't been much happening in the markets on a day-to-day basis. Now, I hope I don't regret saying it. Things have been kind of calm lately. There hasn't been these gyrations.
It's always a calm before a storm, right?
So the total potential savings is about $248,000?
Yes. Now, that could go up.
It could go up?
Yeah, if rates go down, that savings would go up.
Okay.
But in your ordinance, I would think that you might say, we only want to proceed if the net savings after all costs to us is at least 3% or X $100,000, et cetera, et cetera. That helps me, help you. One of the byproducts I guess I should warn you about is if we try and set this up as a parameters to be adopted by the board in advance of the actual transaction, then I have to put an ad in the paper which specifies an issue not to exceed. And if the real issue is about $6 million, and I have to put a safety margin of about $50,000 on each one of the 20 or so maturities, the ad grows from $6 million to more like 10 or 11 million, just so that for DCED purposes, I don't exceed the maturity amount in any one of the 20 maturities. Sometimes people get upset when they say, I thought you said it was $6 million, why is the ad twice that? Well, the ad's twice that, so we know that we never go outside the dotted line, but we're still trying to produce the smallest bond issue, which will produce the savings for you.
Do you handle the Unit Debt Service Act, or do I do that, or bond counsel?
Well, after 30 years, I think I can do it, but the bondholders want bond counsel. So they will want a red book, so-called red book bond counsel, to make sure that all the filings and all that are done correctly, both for federal tax law and state. You'll see a draft of a solicitor's opinion that you'll get to work on. But part of the $50,000 of fixed costs is for a bond counsel that does nothing but this kind of work. In the past, the township has used the firm of Lamb Lane in Westchester, but there's no requirement that you use them this time.
We're Red Book Bond Counsel also, but all we do is review for municipalities. We don't take the lead.
Well, and I'm told by attorneys that along with being the Red Book Bond Counsel and giving the bond opinion comes the responsibility to answer questions for the next 30 years about the bonds, and not all firms are set up for that.
The insurance rates get driven way up. Okay.
So how do we proceed from here? Joe, can you guys give us a little help in that, or David, do you have any expertise in this field?
Not really, but I want to ask, Joe, if we do the refinancing, it would not affect the taxation that supports the repayment of the bond, would it?
Would not affect what?
The taxation that supports the...
4%?
No.
Okay, that stays in place.
My understanding from looking at your books and records is that the existing tax more than pays for its share of the debt service and is generating a surplus which goes into the capital.
That's what I want to protect.
But I have a question on that, and I don't know how to say it correctly, but so we're generating surplus funds over the tax. Is that allowed to be used for prepayment, or is that allowed to be used? I know that's probably a yes. but is that also allowed to be used for the purpose, going into the open space fund?
For the open space bond, you gotta keep the
No.
taxes for open space, so it's gotta be used for pay off the open space
You
bond.
can't use it for purchasing open space.
Or purchasing,
Well, you
of
can-
course, yeah, it's gotta be open space.
And you can actually even use it for maintenance of the open space.
Yeah, that was changed recently. So in my view, the dedicated open space tax fund can be used to purchase land, fee simple or however. It can be used to pay debt service on your bonds. It can be used for maintenance under an amendment to Act 153. And I sought guidance from 2 separate bond councils this week, and they say that surplus funds in the open space account can be used to prepay debt as well. Open space debt. Now, I've kept very careful records of which of your bonds are for open space and which are for this building and which are for the maintenance building, public works and other things. But again, about 80% of your debt has been filed with DCED and described as self-liquidating from a dedicated tax. So you're not charged with that debt in the formula which calculates how much debt the township's allowed to incur. That debt is so-called excluded as self-liquidating, just like some towns exclude sewer debt because it comes from a dedicated source.
So you know the numbers, I mean, I don't know the numbers, for our open space debt versus our general?
I do. I don't know if I can
That's fine.
spout
Okay.
them tonight, but
All right.
I looked it up this afternoon and I made a note to myself. I'll see if I can.
And do you know which bonds they are?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I told DCED in 2012 which bonds they were. And the amount outstanding today of the 7.5 million of this bond issue, which is outstanding, 5,620,000
Okay.
has already been excluded, and their assumption is it will continue to be excluded.
Okay.
So that's 80%. But I know how much each year it is too.
And I guess that's spread over the whole term, not the non-open space debt,
Well,
or is it up in the
the
beginning?
non-open space debt might be shorter and not go as far as 2031.
Right, I guess I'm getting to the first, the 16, 17, 18, those bonds.
There's some in there that is not open space. But remember, in 2012, we borrowed almost $1 million.
I know, right.
That was for a variety of purposes. It included roads and some trails and miscellaneous that was not excluded, even though some of it might have been used for open space. It was sort of more generic, and it's paid from the general fund.
But they would be the longer ones. They
I
would
don't
go out-
know, I'm not sure about that. I have to look.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm not sure if they're, I mean, I think they also go out to 31, just like the open space bonds do.
So your numbers exclude whatever we have in the open space reserve, right?
I don't understand, Jim.
We have a separate reserve for open space,
Yes,
right?
yes.
You're
And I
not including those funds in paying off the bond.
No, I'm assuming those monies that are in capital reserve called open space are needed for upcoming or not yet identified open space.
And when
If
you
that's wrong, you guys have to tell me that, no, that we want to use that money.
And when you set up the next bond, is there any requirement that the open space tax pass through that bond as a guaranteed source of revenue?
Yeah, I think the expectation would be that the bonds that replace the bonds that are being paid for out of the open space tax will continue to be paid out of the open space tax unless you tell me you want to change.
Is there a reserve in the bond for excess tax that's associated with open space?
I don't know if I understand. The tax is generating more money than the debt service needs, but there's nothing in the bond or any of the bond documents that talk about what that reserve is to be used for, how it's.
When you do this reissue, you will identify what's open space and what's not, correct?
When I do the new issue?
The new issue, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes, I
even
will.
in 2021 or 2030, we'll know that 10,000 worth of these bonds are general, and then the rest is.
There is a workbook now that's been created for the township staff for the last bond issue, which has pages and pages of, this is open space, this is something else, this is some, and it's all there semi-annually for them to keep track of, so they can pay from the right source every 6 months.
Right.
That workbook exists.
Joe, I don't know whether I'm asking this right, but he said, he's talking about the bonds, but how about the tax referendum? Is there anything in the tax referendum that was in 2002 or 2003 that, that 3/4% that would allow or not, or keep us from using the surplus of that tax revenue purchasing open space?
There should not be, but I'd have to read it.
I think we have to.
But I can't imagine there would be.
It go against the whole purpose.
I'm not sure. So I was around when that referendum was done, and I know it was done in accordance with Act 153. I know Act 153 pretty well. And as long as you're using the tax in the manner as prescribed by Act 153, which was then later amended to allow maintenance of open space, up to 25% of the annual amount. The law says nothing about whether you can use cash reserves to prepay. That's why I had to ask bond counsel if they had any opinions, and they said it seemed consistent with the law as they read it.
Sarah?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Having heard the presentation about the potential sewer system sale tonight, would that change or cause you to recommend a different timing for the refinancing once we knew, at least had the valuation of the sewage systems?
Well, because the sewer system is not open space, to take those funds and use it for an open space.
I wasn't suggesting any use of it. I'm just saying, would knowing more about that potential income, would that make you, would that change your advice on when we should do the refinancing? I'm not talking at all about where the money.
I actually didn't know about that study until I got the agenda for tonight's meeting. So it did come as complete new news to me. And I think in a perfect world, if I only had to delay a little while to find out what the results of the valuation were without harming the chances for the refunding, I'd be willing, I think that'd be a good thing to do.
By September.
Right, so if he stays on schedule and can give us guidance in time, in a timely way, then waiting, a few weeks seems like it might be a smart thing to do. But if it drags into next year, then I'd say, gosh, I don't want to wait. That's too risky. Too many things could happen. I'm worried about, lots of things. Now, I used to have to just worry about domestic policy, but now I have to worry about, Crimea? Since when do I have to, keep track of that?
But why would it matter? Why would the outcome of that, the sewer system sale, have anything to do with this? Since this is an 80% open space.
Yeah, well, maybe not, but
if it was general, I would
but
say
hang on.
yes.
But here's my get out of jail free card. So when you're doing a refunding like this, and you're going to do $6 million, right, of refunding, I always ask, so what other long-range capital projects like roads and bridges are hanging around that have been on the back burner that you'd like to issue at the same time, because I can keep track of refunding bonds and new money bonds, and it costs almost nothing to add in some new money for long delayed projects. The legal bill is the same. So if you told me that was going to be taken care of, some of those long-range capital projects were going to be taken care of by a windfall, a one-time windfall from selling a capital asset, that might affect the discussion about the sort of other new money that might want to accompany this refunding. So that's.
I don't think there is any new money contemplated, at least I have.
I have to ask. Now, the worst is when we go down the road and people say, wait, what about, why didn't you think about this? Or why didn't you remind us about that?
Just to put it, even though no vote has been taken on it, would be my preference, and I'll bet you the two gentlemen that sit next to me, that the roads that you heard about will be taken care of through our operating budget over the next 10 years. That's the sale of the sewer system, that may or may not happen. That can't enter into my decision on how to fix Buttonwood Road.
And I wouldn't want the pending sale of the sewer system to derail this whole thing while you're trying to, have everything work out and let this thing go off the track. So, what I really can't answer for you though is, back to page 3, just real quickly. You already are generating a surplus in the open space fund of a certain amount per year. Would another $16,000, $17,000, $18,000 a year more surplus by reducing the debt service, would that be helpful to the township?
Less is always good.
I thought so. As I said, it can't be really considered a grand slam home run, but anytime you get a chance to reduce debt and walk away with net savings approaching 4% of refunded principal, you've got to ask yourself, when's my next chance to do this?
Joe, can you guide us and tell us what we should do tonight? Should we think on this? What should we do?
Well, if you give us direction, Mike prepares a sample ordinance, not a review, that you'd entertain at your next meeting. That's the first formal action that you would take.
What do you think?
Ordinance to what, for what, Joe?
To approve this transaction.
To approve the transaction?
Yeah. As long as you get a 3% return.
Would you like us to make the next meeting a Debt Act advertised meeting in which you were able to adopt this go-forward ordinance? Would you like us to put that in place?
It's longer than 7 days.
It's not, the Debt Act only requires 72 hours. It trumps the second-class code.
Second-class township code, you're right.
But we don't usually cut it that close as that. But, I think I will start the process of updating the offering documents that were prepared in 2012. There's a little bit of catching up to do. There's been a few audits have come and gone since that book was done. So I have a fair amount of work to do, which I'm going to undertake to catch up to speed. But we have about a month to see which way interest rates are going, and if they're getting better or getting worse, or they've been unchanged for the last 3 weeks. Okay. And I guess we can check in with you the week before your scheduled meeting and say, give you an update on where the savings are, and you can say, well, let's go forward with an ordinance, or we can wait a month. You only meet monthly, right?
No,
twice. Oh,
twice
twice.
a month.
All right. Well, that's.
The first meeting in September is going to be on Tuesday, the 6th.
This schedule was thinking about the 19th as being the first probable opportunity to take action on a rather lengthy ordinance.
So I think you just said that, forget the 6th, the 19th is the target for that?
That'd be the soonest.
Okay.
Yeah. And even then, we wouldn't have sold bonds. We, according to this schedule, would still be waiting to hear from Moody's. We'd still be working with Moody's.
But there's no reason why we couldn't approve it on the 5th.
6th.
6th. Why is it? Oh, because of holiday. Right?
Well, how about we show you a draft for your review, a sort of a form of the ordinance for your approval on the 19th.
On the
Draft
5th.
6th.
Draft on the 6th.
The 6th, I'll keep it.
Yeah,
Draft on the
I'm gonna
6th.
I'm going to want all your stuff in the ordinance, and really, it's a standard unit debt act ordinance. It's
Yeah,
not that
well, a
complicated.
little bit, it's almost standard except for that not to exceed, and interest rates not to exceed, and
Right.
savings not less than, all that, but it's about 30 pages somehow.
Well, he has samples, I'm going to put together.
Okay.
He's going to get me you're going to get me the numbers.
I guess, wait, before I promise to do all this stuff at the next meeting, would you like to continue to use the same firm that has served you prior as your bond counsel? Because they're the ones who have to supply the models of the ordinance, et cetera.
What do you think?
I don't have any issue with that.
Okay, fine with me, that's fine.
I believe I'm safe in saying that they are among the most affordable.
So they're definitely among the most affordable.
And very well respected in Chester County.
Okay.
So
So it will be the 6th or the 19th?
Yeah,
okay.
maybe a draft and an update on the 6th, a draft for your sort of review and update, and then maybe with pulling the trigger and doing something formal on the 19th.
Yes, sir.
At the start of your discussion, didn't you say that the net savings was $218,000? And then you rattled off like $60,000 or $70,000 worth of expenses?
Yeah.
Is
That, my savings is net before, net
that's
after all the.
After those expenses?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Well, you said you're gonna save 3% on $6 million?
I'm gonna say, right now, it's 4% of less than six,
$240,000.
because we're not refunding all the bonds and everything. Right now, on page 3, of course, you don't have that. It's
240-some thousand. Then
Right,
it's
less.
expenses, it's
248 with a
But his
PV
expense- His money was like 44,000,
Right.
that's another third, so I don't understand how you're saving 218.
You're saving about 218.
There's something else in there that I did back in.
Less is the expenses.
We're refunding 5.76 million of principal. And we're saving 217 on that, that's 3.77%.
Right, and then your expenses were at 44 plus another 13, so that's another $57,000.
No, the expenses are paid out of the new bond issue. And the net
Increases
savings
the
of the
amount.
new bond issue, which includes all the expenses, it
Okay.
leaves us with 217. There's no deduct off the 217. That's the net number at the end.
It's a good question.
Sorry to, yeah, it's a little,
You have bond counsel and me in that, right?
I beg your pardon, I
You
got
have
it.
bond counsel and me in that?
And other people.
Okay.
Yeah, printers, sadly, there's a host of characters, but it's the only way to do it. And it repeatedly works.
Any other questions? We don't need to take any action tonight?
Can you post this also, this presentation?
Oh, I'm sorry, George, I didn't see it.
Can you post this presentation as well?
Yeah.
Can we send a PDF?
I can, yeah. This, the PDF you have doesn't have some of these pages. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
I'm sorry to take as long as I did, but
If you're going to have a motion, I would just authorize Mike to go forward with preparing the proper documents. Just so there's something on record that we're interested in.
Okay.
Second.
Any
and please,
questions?
if more questions occur to you, I know you don't do this every day, please, Erica knows how to find me.
I do too.
Okay.
Brian, you had a question?
I'd like to compliment the gentleman, because I remember being here back in 2012 and listened to the presentations then, and maybe I wasn't smart, but I do believe that your presentation tonight was much more thorough, much more explanatory. I have clues of what's going on.
I was the guy. And I didn't get any better, trust me.
Okay, I've gotten better listening.
Okay. Well, I have a few better more graphs that I didn't have in 2012.
Well, and that may be just it, is the graph really, as you walk through that explanation, it makes a lot more
You
sense.
can't blame the old guy
Oh, yeah, I
from
second
2012,
it.
because that was me. And 06, and 03, and 98 was me too, so.
We didn't vote yet. Very good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good.
Then, any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Next, there's a new zoning hearing application from Stephen Harmon at 4 Half Hill Road for special exception.
The decision you have to make in this case is whether to oppose, support, or stay neutral. And if you were to oppose or support, you'd send the solicitor in opposition before the zoning hearing board as a party litigant. In this case, this is a gentleman who's conducting a logging operation at a residence. He's also conducting a landscaping business. And he applied for a home occupation for a business that existed a long time. And he applied for a home occupation. The zoning officer turned it down. and he's appealed the zoning officer's denial, and he's asked for a variance for these uses. He also has a driveway that was installed without a permit in the floodplain area, and that was something else that he's also appealed. So my recommendation is that you send the solicitor in opposition, because at the very least, we need to defend and support our zoning officer's decision.
So you're recommending that we do what?
That you send the solicitor in opposition as a party litigant. The board can actually appear as a party litigant before your own zoning hearing board. And the purpose of that is to make sure the zoning hearing board sits in a judicial function. It's not their job, nor are they supposed to build a record. The record's presented by the applicant. If you don't have a party in opposition on the other side, you don't get a sufficient record to defend the decision. So the reason why you enter your appearance is to make sure that if you want it denied and you want to defend that decision, that you have someone building a record to support that denial.
Okay, so where do we go? You guys make a motion for that?
Yes. The motion would be, if I can phrase it, the motion would be to enter the Board of Supervisors' appearance in opposition of the application. And then naturally I would go there.
And who's going to do that?
Anyone that makes a motion, I would do it.
Okay.
But anyone that makes a motion would enter your appearance as a party litigant.
So moved.
Okay, any questions from the audience?
Is the date set for that hearing? Thank you.
I'm a little confused, but I think I understand what you said. I'm going to start tonight. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And our office staff doesn't have to do anything with that.
Well, I need the zoning officer. I'll send a letter to the attorney, Mike Crotty's the attorney for the applicant. I'll send a letter to him saying the board's voted under your appearance in opposition. So he has a heads up, it's a common courtesy between attorneys.
Okay, that's what I was worried about, is closing the loop. Okay.
I move the board authorize the advertisement of the snow removal bid as submitted.
Second.
Any questions from the audience? Is this substantially the same thing as last year, or is it changed?
It's substantially the same, yes.
Okay.
Mark has put his touches on it, but.
Say that again?
Mark did put his touches on it.
Good. Okay, any questions, once again? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. What's the next one? We are... Authorization to proceed for an ordinance for the speed limit to Redbone Road?
David, you do this one.
I move that the board authorize the township solicitor to advertise the ordinance to set the speed limit on Redbone Road.
You feel like seconding? Okay, second. Any questions from the audience?
What is the limit going to be?
25.
25. Why not 15, like St. Matthew?
You're not allowed to.
What's that?
You're not allowed to, 25 is the lowest.
Isn't St. Matthew's 15?
Only if there's a crossing.
No?
So just at schools.
Yeah, only a crossing, only a school crossing.
And only during certain hours.
St. Matthew's has a 15 on it.
Yeah.
I just drove by it.
Yep, it
Coming
does.
here.
Okay, well,
Just
state law
FYI.
says you gotta go to 25.
Up on the ridge, it's
Yeah,
15 miles an hour.
15, yeah.
Yep.
Question in the back.
What's the current speed limit now?
I don't think it's posted.
Never been
Then it's
posted.
55.
So you can't-
So it's 55 if there's nothing.
So, Brian?
It appears that the township line between us and Upper Euclid goes right down the middle of that. Do they get anything in here, or we set the limit, or what?
You know, that's a very good point, Brian. We should run that by Corey Varga.
Yeah, that's fine, and this comes out, we had a resident provide a few concerns, and so the chief conducted a traffic study, a speed study related to this, and this was the finding that we needed to post, and as a result of it, 25 seemed to be just right, so, but we can, I'll definitely let him know, we'll consult.
Touch base with them,
Sure.
even if it's
So
Not necessary.
how do you explain the 15 on St. Matthews? Why Redbone can't be 15?
Can't explain it, I just.
Well, can
And
someone
we're
look into
talking
it?
about dirt St.
Right.
Matthews, right?
Brian?
I'm just following up with what Erica said. The chief did do a traffic study, or speed study on there, and 85th percentile comes up to however, to 25 miles per hour. Very good, thank you.
Any other questions?
Is,
Artie?
Where's the 15-mile-an-hour limit, other than in the school zone on St. Matthews Road?
on the ridge, all the way up,
Almost to Chester Springs Road.
yep, between Chester Springs and
And
Redbone.
Redbone,
It's
it's got a
15 miles an
15
hour.
posted.
And who put it
If
up
I-
there? I don't know. It's been-
If I
I
may-
walk up there, it's 15 miles an hour. It's been that way for
Yes.
several years.
If I may comment, Tammy had mentioned that there was a study done on that portion, so I'll look and check into that, if it was the road foreman or whom looked into that, but that was referenced, so.
Do we leave it, or do we take it down?
Only one comment.
Okay.
What's that?
Only one comment.
I mean, they're both, they're both gravel roads.
Right. Yeah.
Well, 25 would be better than nothing.
Any other comments from the audience? Then we're going to call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
I move the township contract with general code to codify the township ordinance and tear down the online document in the total amount of $20,844.
Second.
Before we go to questions from the audience, Joe, I have one. If we are planning to do our code over in beginning in 2017, and the Phoenixville Regional Council is doing the master plan, does it make sense to do the codification now or later?
You have the maintenance contract with this, don't you, where they keep adding ordinances as we go along?
Yes, I believe it is in
You know, it's almost, I can't believe it's not codified now. But if you have the maintenance contract, when we're done with the zoning and the saddle, it will just plug that in and so it'll turn up to date codification.
And that's covered under the maintenance cost.
Well, let's read the maintenance part of it, then.
I think that's what somebody said.
Does the audience know what this is, what we're talking about?
No.
Joe, can you give them a 30-second speech on this?
Did you say me?
Yes.
Oh.
We're going to get our money's worth from our solicitor.
I'm just glad I wasn't lynched earlier. Our code is, well, it doesn't exist. It's a series of ordinances passed from the beginning of time. I work in a lot of townships. This is the only one I ever heard of that has never codified their ordinances. So when I called Tammy and asked her whether we have such an ordinance, she has to go from day one all the way forward to look for it. And if Tammy should ever retire, we're really stuck. It'd be hard, very hard to find ordinances. So I never have the peace of mind of knowing I have the current law, because it's almost impossible to read every ordinance that's ever been passed from the beginning of time to make sure you have it covered. The codification process takes all these ordinances and codifies it, puts in numerical indexes, does an index, and there's numbers, and it does it electronically also. So if I'm looking for obstacle course, I just type in obstacle course, and it pops up everywhere in our ordinances that obstacle course is mentioned. Then I know I've covered everything there is in the ordinances about obstacle courses. Right now, and so often municipalities piggyback things on different ordinances, but it's almost virtually impossible to find piggyback language in various ordinances because we have no way of getting to them. So I think it's every dime spent on this is a dime well spent. And ordinarily, I would say, okay, well, wait till you do zoning, wait till you do salad. It may be years of doing zoning and salad. I wouldn't want to put this off that long, especially if the maintenance includes putting in these new ordinances.
There's the maintenance.
And there is a payback period, so to speak, on this, because then every time Joe has to go doing research, and he just can't put, we're paying a fee on that, so.
So what does that mean? It's not new.
And Timmy's time and Eric's time.
And for us, I just type it in, find it. Yeah, it's very good.
Well,
Posting new between regular and supplements, so would this be considered regular? I guess we would ask them.
if I'm taking zoning totally out and replacing it with a new code, and I'm taking salad totally out and replacing it with a new code, it probably wouldn't be that much for them to do that.
Should we ask?
We can
If we think that's gonna, I mean.
I'd
we
approve it
think-
either way, even if you got to redo it, because we could be years working on zoning. And then salad was right after that.
Right, okay.
We'd be years working on salad.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
What was the motion then? The motion's been made?
To approve this proposal in the amount of 20,000 and change, I believe.
$1,844.
And it doesn't need to go to bid?
It's on to CoStarz.
Oh, it is, okay.
And how long is the term of it? 1 year. So the maintenance really doesn't come into play. They're just getting it done.
There's annual maintenance.
So
There's
there's
900 some odd dollars, $995, $1,000 a year.
And this enables you to put it on the internet, so everyone else has access to where ordinances and can look up whatever they want.
So when it codifies back to the beginning of time, if there was an ordinance that existed but was canceled, it'll be there, but it'll say no longer superseded by or whatever.
Go take the most current law and put it in there. They even will make some recommendations about when you're done with certain laws and how they correct them based on newer legislation. So it's a whole involved process. Very worthwhile.
Brian?
We can search this electronically, it makes a lot of sense, and I like electronic stuff. At the same time, is it possible to say, I want to have a printed copy of all the ordinances as they are right now? Is it possible out of this system to go and have it cough out a printed copy? Or do you have to have internet access to be able to look at it?
Is there gonna be printed copies?
Electronically, you won't get every ordinance passed from the beginning to time. You'd have to go into our ordinance book and manually copy all that. But once this code is done, then you can get the entire code book printed or look at it electronically.
I think
But we have a lot of
So,
things that,
in other words, it reduces the redundancy. Stuff that has been obsolete or being replaced goes away completely. But if I wanted to have either an electronic file that I had personally, which may not be up to date once it's coughed out to me, but is it possible to get that copy there, or do you have to have an internet connection to be able to look at it, period?
We will have, part of this, we get 5 bound copies. So if you want to come in and do a right-to-know and copy until your little heart's content, you can. But we're getting, as part of this deal, 5 hard copies.
Well, I'm going to go and say, is it possible to get a PDF copy? I guess is my question.
It's on the web, internet, I'm sure you can.
Well, it can be on the internet that you can interrogate it, but if you want to say, I want to have a copy of it and look at it on a PDF form, it may not do that.
After it's codified, it'll be on ordinances.com, and you can just copy it straight from there.
Okay.
Any other questions? Did anybody notice it's getting to be late? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Resolution 2016 to appoint a new voting delegate to the Chester County Tax Collection District.
I move that the board adopt resolution 20-2016, appointing Erica as voting delegate to the Chester County Tax Collection District.
That would be Erica Backdoor.
It would be.
Any questions? Brian?
What is it?
You know, I read this earlier today, and I still am not sure. We just need a delegate on this side.
Yes, we're updating many different resolutions to get a proper contact information, and this is just another, basically, consortium that West Vincent sits on.
What does the Chester County Tax Collection District do?
discuss the earned income tax.
We need to have an alternate delegate, Brian, that's why we're doing this, okay. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye. You know, we added a number 19, we wanted to put a limit on the township manager's approval of expenditures of up to $1,000 without contacting the Board of Supervisors. Does that summarize?
Yes.
Okay. So, do I have a motion to that effect?
I move that our township manager has the ability to spend up to $1,000 without the board's approval. Does that work?
It's good.
Second.
Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. And the last item is public comment on non-agenda items. Gee, you were patiently waiting all day.
I have been patiently waiting. This has to do with a concern that the Historic Resources Committee has. The Zerwisniak property on Birch Run Road, close to 100, the pretty collection of old red farm buildings, about 5 buildings. I've been hearing there's protection for them, that at some point they're going to be fixing them up and taking care of things. So I decided I wanted to see what the protection was. And today, Tammy got it and found it for us, and I read it and I was excited because it sounded so good that all the existing house, barn, and other structures located on the Zerwisniak property shall be retained and maintained in their current condition as of the date of this agreement by Hankin until conveyed by Hankin. When conveyed, the structures shall be conveyed under and subject to an easement in favor of and enforceable only by the township, which shall require township approval for any change or improvement that would impact the structural integrity. I'm getting a little tired. Any change of use of the structures, and a few other things. But anyway.
Would you like me to hand out the copies you have for everybody?
I can do that. Part of the problem is that when conveyed, the structures shall be conveyed under and subject to an easement in favor of. It appears that this land was sold by Hankin to Pulte, I think, and there's no sign of an easement. In other words, those lovely buildings have no protection on them. Maybe, Joe, you can figure out some way to throttle somebody and make this work.
You guys give me a lot of challenges tonight.
Well, I'm sure you're up to it. Well, maybe the easement is there, but it's not in the township records.
But anyway, so I went from feeling, wow, we got it, to saying, oh Lord, we're gonna get.
And one of the contributing buildings has already been removed.
Has already been what?
Has already been removed. There was a small stand that was from the original horse show grounds there, and that one's been removed.
So how should we proceed with this? Should we turn this over to zoning?
Well, somebody's got to find out if there's an easement. And if there's an easement, then zoning has to, I guess.
What to do with title search.
And will you let us know, the three of us know how you make out? That's one of the things that we do all these things here and we never get any feedback. Okay, Harry, thank you. Give us a couple days.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other, yes?
Good evening, I'm Beverly Waller, I'm the manager of the Henrietta Hankin Branch Library. And I just want to give you an idea of some of the things that are happening in your local library. We are a busy place. We are providing reading, watching, and listening materials to an average of 2,800 people every week. Our ongoing programs include Bridge and Mahjong weekly. We have a Crochet 1, Knit 2 conversational Spanish bi-weekly. We continue to expand and provide fun social events to the residents of West Vincent Township. We continue to bring speakers to the library to explain topics from college financing to Medicare options. We have historical programs, and we've recently partnered with the Chester County Historical Society for their year-long program, The Age of Aquarius exhibit. If you haven't been to that, I suggest you go. For those of us that were growing up in the 60s, it'll take you to a flash in the past. This summer, everyone, no matter what their age, was invited to participate in a summer reading program. It is a documented fact that children need to read throughout the summer so that they don't decline in their reading ability. Our Youth Services Department enrolled over 800 children in that program this summer. They encouraged them to read. They have given them activities to do so that they are engaged in learning and school readiness activities all summer long, being ready to go back to school in September. Adults, they need encouragement too to read. We've provided them opportunities to read and listen to books and earn opportunities to win gift baskets. We've had programs. We had a murder mystery event where people came in and figured out who did it. It was a butler, but he didn't need to do it. Friends of the group, our friends of the Henrietta Hankin Branch Library are a tremendous asset to us. They help support us in things that our funding will not allow us to buy. They have recently bought us a new outdoor book drop and new signage in the building. They also supported these summer reading activities. We have meeting space for the community, and numerous Boy and Girl Scout troops meet in our facility throughout the year. In the first 6 months of 2016, we've had 184 room reservations with 585 hours of use. Like all businesses, we strive to spend our dollars wisely to benefit customers the most. We continue to move funding into e-materials, things that you use on your Nooks and your Kindles, so that, because that is our fastest growing circulation in the area. When our revenues are down, we can't buy as many things for you. Our revenue streams from materials include money from the state, from fines, from fees, and our donations, including funds from our local municipalities. The formulas that determine our portion of state funds are partially based on local financial effort. As you begin the budgeting process this fall, please consider the opportunities and the services that the library is providing for your community. Additional support from West Vincent Township would be appreciated as we strive to be the library our community wants and needs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Erica, you've just been told.
Oh, yes, a very nice tour, so thank you.
I'll forward this to both you and Tammy so you have it.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Mark Schaefer. And I know there's been a lot of transition, of course, going on and over the past 9 months, and welcome aboard to Erica. That's been a long time coming. My question is, with everything going on with our transition, we bring up zoning a lot, and is there going to be a point, or there is any consideration right now as far as having a permanent zoning officer, somebody who's working full-time with our township? I'm not implying. I'm just asking.
That's a good point.
Because if we look at this, and I think we're only working part-time right now, well, from 1 o'clock to what, 4:30?
But are they part-time?
Now, I think.
With Cedarville.
Yeah.
And there's so much happening, and so much has to go to zoning, and I'm just really concerned that they don't have time to cover the things that they need to cover.
Do we have 2 guys now?
The office hours are, you're only in the building part-time, but they're doing.
No, but they're out there doing work.
Doing inspections. They're
But
out
the
doing
number of
things.
hours that we anticipated in the beginning are been exceeded by a great deal, I imagine.
Oh, yes, we
Yeah,
can take
okay.
calls all day long.
Yeah, I think it,
Thank
I
you.
think it is a full-timer,
That's good.
and we still have Jason and Richard Reichel in there. Jason's full-time and Richard Reichel's part-time. So I bet you we have the equivalent, but check it out. You come in next meeting?
Oh, I'll be here. But I was just wondering about Tim Frank, because I know I was working with him for a little bit, and he'd gone already. So when that happens, you just lose momentum, and there's not a consistency.
Oh, okay.
There's not a consistency, and things fall through the cracks.
Agreed.
So that was the concern about, everything we're putting into place. I think that piece still needs to be looked at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, non-agenda items?
Before you close out the meeting, I wanted to acknowledge Rob Sevia. This is his first day working with my firm. He's thinking about doing municipal law, I'm not so sure.
Hang in there, Rob. Hang in there.
If I could have there is one more announcement.
Okay, I just wanted to remind everyone, the newsletter was mailed out, Township newsletter should be in mailboxes here. Thank you, Tammy, for your hard work on that. The Sustainability Committee, that has been rescheduled from tomorrow evening until next Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. And the Planning Commission meeting for this Thursday, the 18th, was canceled. Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
I guess.